Peter Parker returned to his room and fell headlessly on the bed, letting his sweat and dust stain his bedding, and didn't want to get up to take a shower at all. Because he has been so tired recently. In fact, not only Peter Parker, but other superheroes are not much better. After solving Hydra, SHIELD manpower is very scarce, and the messy supercriminals still jump out in 2 days. If it's just that, it's fine. I didn't know where a couple of siblings popped out a while ago. They integrated the surviving supernatural beings transformed by Hydra and formed a force called the Mutant Brotherhood. SHIELD was right. As the siblings' abilities are really tricky, SHIELD and the Avengers have suffered a lot from their hands. This caused some super criminals who mutated due to accidents and were hunted by official forces to join the brothers and sisters. Fortunately, the targets of the two brothers and sisters seem to be the Avengers and SHIELD. They would not easily attack the civilians. Therefore, some real villains were screened out, otherwise the power of the Mutant Brotherhood would be even greater. I don't know if Mr. Stark and the others can find a way to deal with the two brothers and sisters. Peter Parker, lying on the bed, muttered to himself. He and the two brothers and sisters had fought against each other. They lost terribly. If it hadn't been for the energy shield module of the Knight's Belt had been completely opened, Peter Parker might not have lost miserably, but would have lost his life. If only Kraft could help him upgrade his belt again. Thinking of this, Peter suddenly recalled the tragic experience of the 3 days that he and Harry had been waiting for to change back, and quickly threw the terrible thought behind him. Wrong. No need to upgrade. Still count on Mr. Stark to be more reliable. My brain is really broken. How come I suddenly think of that bastard kid Kraft? Peter Parker rolled over, knocked his head hard and murmured. I don't know what happened to Harry. Last time Peter and Harry Osborn became girls in front of the evil quartet. Fortunately, they were in a remote location and there were no other bystanders, but Dr. Otto and the others saw the whole process with their own eyes. Peter Parker is okay. His identity has not been made public, but it is well known that Harry Osborn is the Shining Locust. So in the end they did not hand over the defeated evil quartet to the police, but were locked into the secret base of the Osborn group. Although Peter was not too supportive of this illegal imprisonment, he still acquiesced to Harry Osborn's actions considering the future mental health of his good brother Harry. It was definitely not because Dr. Otto also knew his identity. With mixed thoughts in his head, the exhausted Peter Parker gradually closed his eyes and fell asleep. Why is it so noisy? Peter Parker in his sleep was awakened by the noise from downstairs. He rubbed his eyes and sat up from the bed. Are there any guests? Peter jumped out of the bed, pulled his collar and sniffed. The smell of sweat was a bit heavy. It's not too polite to see the guests like this. Peter quickly rushed into the bathroom, took a shower, put on clean clothes, and then walked downstairs. Oh, Peter, you are awake. Uncle Ben happened to pass by with a plate full of strawberry pie, with a smile on his face, looking very happy. Quickly, see who is here. Uncle Ben, who was holding the plate, charged Peter with roar, and then continued to walk quickly towards the living room. Is it someone I know? Peter scratched his head, a little curious. If it were Harry Osborn and Mary Jane, Ben would not be so excited. After all, they often come. Could it be Mr. Stark, or other members of the Avengers? Since Aunt May and Uncle Ben knew their Spider-Man identity, Peter also invited colleagues from the Avengers to visit the house. Uncle Ben even asked Captain Rogers for an autographed photo. As Peter guessed, he walked behind Uncle Ben towards the living room. However, before he walked to the living room, he saw a black figure stalking a piece of hamburger, jumping out of the corner, and passing between his legs in the blink of an eye. Bella. That little black cat with a red scarf, Peter Parker, definitely knew that it was a man who could never lose his fighting power and could talk. Ordinary Bombay cat. Did Alice come here? No wonder Uncle Ben is so happy. Regarding Alice's robot identity, Uncle Ben and Aunt May have already known about it, but like Peter Parker, they don't have any strange eyes, and they still love her as much as they did before. But it's not right. Doesn't Alice also come here often? And with her alone, there is no need to prepare so many times, right? There are a lot of strawberry pie on the plate that Uncle Ben brought just now. Did Ned come too? Maybe Uncle Martin. Right. That's right. That's it. Peter speculated from the visitor and felt that there was no problem at all, but his legs were nailed to the place like roots, as if there were some monsters in the front living room. However, no matter how Peter Parker avoided it, the reality would not change in any way. Not long after Bajor rushed out, there was a furious roar in front of him. You stupid cat robbed me of supplies again, naughty animal. Along with Peter's very familiar way of speaking, a yellow figure sprang out from the corner in front. Cooey, Quinn. Peter Parker looked dumbfounded when he saw the kobold standing up in front of him. I don't have time to talk to you now, I'm going to catch that thief cat. Rua. Quinn nodded at Peter and ran past him with his hind legs. When Quinn's figure disappeared, Peter Parker still couldn't recover. Quinn, as this evolved? Is this a bit too fast? Seeing Quill in the form of a kobold, Peter Parker inexplicably thought of Darwin's theory of evolution. Ha 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 ha. Ghost hunting game? I want to come too. Without waiting for Peter Parker to sort out his thoughts, another figure rushed out, laughing and rushing towards Peter Parker. Danger, 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 danger. The moment O'Reilly appeared, Peter's spider telepathy sounded a strong alarm to him like crazy. Before he could even think about what was going on, Peter Parker instinctively jumped up, hanging upside down from the ceiling. Ouch. O'Reilly, who ran from below, braked suddenly and turned to look at Peter Parker hanging from the ceiling. So handsome. O'Reilly tilted her head and stared at Peter Parker, who was lying on the ceiling, and praised. He. Thank you for the compliment. Peter wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, and replied with a dry smile. His new clothes at the moment were soaked in sweat. Spider telepathy's hazard alert stopped when O'Reilly stopped, and Peter jumped off the ceiling. O'Reilly, right? Long time no see. Ouch. O'Reilly tilted her head. She had completely forgotten that she had ever met Peter Parker. But that's not important. O'Reilly is a good polite kid. So she showed a big smile and greeted Peter Parker. Roar. How are you? Ha ha. The corners of Peter Parker's mouth twitched, and a smile that was worse than crying appeared on his face. I am not good at all now. When Peter Parker walked into the living room with a mournful face, he saw that besides Martin Lee, Alice, and Kraft, there was a little girl with blonde hair that she had never seen before. She was wearing a pirate hat. Sitting next to Mary Jane whispered something. Hey. Is it the robot sister Kraft made for himself again? The witty Peter has already seen everything, and the kid Kraft is the legendary sister-in-law in all likelihood. Ah, it's brother Peter. Alice, who was being caught and chatting by Aunt May, first saw Peter Parker coming in, and quickly stood up and asked Roar. Alice is still as sensible and polite as ever, even if they know she is a robot. Aunt May and Uncle Ben will still talk about her twice. Even the members of the Avengers praised Alice, even Hulk, who would run away at the sight of Kraft and Martin Lee. Definitely, Peter did not reveal the true identity of Alice to the Avengers. Oh, it's Peter, it's been a long time since I saw you. Kraft, who was slumped in his chair, raised his hand lazily. K. Raw. Foo. Special. Seeing Kraft's sluggish appearance, Peter Parker suddenly fell out of breath, gritted his teeth and said word by word. What are you angry about? Kraft looked at Peter inexplicably. He had completely forgotten his prank on his belt, so he didn't know what Peter was angry about. However, this innocent look of Kraft made Peter Parker even more angry. He roared and rushed to Kraft's side, grabbed Kraft's neck with his hands and began to shake it vigorously. You still have the face to ask. You still have the face to ask. Guidance magic power of strong sound. Guidance magic King Kong. Guidance magic firm. Guidance magic blessing of the king. A few rays of light flashed across Kraft's body, and he brushed himself a bunch of buffs. He reached out and grabbed Peter Parker's two wrists, then grinned at Peter Parker, showing his white teeth. Pain, pain, pain. Peter Parker only felt that Kraft's hands were like Dr. Octopus mechanical pliers, clamping his wrists tightly, and as Kraft's hands tightened, Peter could even vaguely hear from his bones wailing. Kraft let go of his palms, and Peter quickly pulled out his hands and stepped back. You guy. When did your strength become so strong? Peter asked with a grin, rubbing his wrist, and he couldn't help but feel sad. Physical fitness was originally my only advantage, but now I don't have it anymore. Humph. Kraft lifted his chin triumphantly. Haven't you seen it? This is magic. Magic? Peter was stunned. Is that Doctor Strange? Who is that? Now it was Kraft's turn to look dumbfounded. He didn't expect Peter to actually see magic. Doctor Strange, formerly known as Stephen Strange, is a highly skilled surgeon. Tony Stark's shrapnel surgery was performed by him. He is Kamar Taj's current supreme magician. The answer to Kraft was Angela, who was sitting next to Mary Jane. After returning to the Earth and entering the familiar network environment, there was not much to hide. Angela, and Kamar Taj was originally Kraft leaving the Earth. Previously let Angela focus on the place. The current supreme magician? What about Ancient One? After Kraft returned to Earth, he ran directly to Aunt May to recount the past. He hadn't had time to find Angela about what happened during the time he was away. Died. How can it be? Kraft curled his lips, not believing that Ancient One would die. At this time, he also remembered that Ancient One had talked to himself about his successor. Stephen Strange should be the doctor in her mouth who was cured by Osborn's regenerative medicine after crippled hands. So this black-bellied dead bald head must have found a chance to escape from the dead. Originally, Kraft planned to go to Ancient One to ask about Soul Gem after recounting the old days with his friends, and now he is going to visit Holy Place in New York. Wait, you know Mr. Strange? And who is Ancient One? The conversation between Kraft and Angela made Peter Parker stunned. The relationship between Doctor Strange and S.H.I.E.L.D. in the Avengers is not very close, that is, Osborn's potion rescued him, and he was the chief surgeon of Tony Stark, so Peter can only understand a little magic. Ancient One is the name of the last supreme magician, a black-bellied old woman who has lived for more than 500 years. Kraft curled his lips and took the opportunity to complain about Ancient One. Then Kraft saw a strawberry pie on the plate beside him suddenly flew up and patted him on the face. Guidance magic flame fist. Kraft's right hand ignited a layer of flames, and he punched it out, burning the flying strawberry pie to ashes. Ha! Ancient One, you really are here. Kraft had long guessed that Ancient One, a voyeur, would definitely appear in him, to be precise, in the vicinity of Rayleigh. It's been a long time, Kraft. Ancient One's figure emerged from the void, and her face still had that calm smile on her face, as if she hadn't thrown the strawberry pie just now. Huh. Are you really dead? Seeing the translucent state of Ancient One, Kraft stretched out his hand and pulled it twice, and his hand passed through Ancient One's body without a doubt. It is definitely impossible to use projection technology. Let alone whether Kamar Taj has this kind of technology, there is absolutely no one on Earth who can play the technology side projection under Angela's nose without being discovered. As for illusion, if it is illusion, Kraft who owns the reality gem and Martin Lee who owns the mind gem can also be easily identified. The most important thing is that when the Ancient One appeared, the soul gem on Kraft's body suddenly moved. Although the movement was very slight, Kraft was also the person who controlled the two infinite gems. A little bit of perception. For me, the body is already a cage, Ancient One of the soul body explained to Kraft with a smile. Although it is a little troublesome without the body, and the strength has been weakened, I finally got rid of it. Dormammu's entanglement. Entanglement in various senses. No matter how nice it is, you are just a crumb magician who throws things away to your apprentice. Kraft, who didn't know the physical condition of Ancient One contemptuously, but even if he knew the condition of Ancient One, he would still despise it. Ancient One didn't make any more excuses with Kraft, she turned to look at Aunt May and Uncle Ben, and owed her body to them. Please forgive me for being uninvited. There is really a dangerous person here who makes me have to keep an eye on it. It doesn't matter, we welcome Ancient One magician to come here at any time. Aunt May waved her hand, and was not shocked by the Ancient One in the state of soul. Since knowing that her nephew is Spider-Man and seeing various inventions of Kraft, she and Ben Uncle's acceptance of ability has become very impressive. Strong. However, even though this kid Kraft is a bit incongruous, he is not a dangerous person, is he? Even in the face of the mysterious magician, Aunt May is still partial to Kraft, and she is very dissatisfied with Ancient One's statement. Peter Parker on the side rolled his eyes, he quite agreed with Ancient One magician's statement that Kraft is a dangerous man. I think you have misunderstood, Ancient One sighed. The dangerous person I'm talking about is not Kraft. Halfway through Ancient One, he turned his head and looked to the wall on the left. Mr. Parker, do you have any plans to renovate the house recently? The topic of Ancient One diverted so suddenly that Uncle Ben didn't know how to answer, and didn't even understand what she meant. Only the Kraft family stretched out their hands to hold their foreheads almost at the same time and sighed long. Boom. In the next second, a big hole was knocked out of the wall that Ancient One was looking at. The laughing Alalay came from the other side of the wall. She also held the unloved Bea and her face one by one. Quinn. Ha 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 ha. Whoops. Rayleigh, who broke through the wall, looked at the living room where the needles could be heard, and then showed a big smile. Ho, where you guys? Do not. I'm not good at all. Peter Parker roared in his heart again. Ha 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 ha. Kraft hugged his belly and laughed wildly, knelt on the ground and thumped the floor hard. After training Rayleigh, and comforting Aunt May and the others, Peter Parker dragged him to his room on the grounds that he had something to discuss with Kraft. Then Kraft listened to Peter Parker to talk about his experience with Harry Osborn, hoping that Kraft could work out something that could change Dr. Octopus's memory. You're still laughing. It's not all caused by your scam. Peter Parker pointed at Kraft angrily and cursed, and from time to time he leaned outside the door, worried that someone else would be attracted to Kraft's laughter. Don't laugh. Hug, sorry. Kraft clutched his stomach and lay on the floor, patted his chest, which was a little breathless because of over-laughing. I didn't expect the two of you to test beforehand. Kraft really didn't expect that after being pitted by himself once, Peter and Harry didn't find a private place to test it first after updating their belts. Although this will be recorded by the belt and sent to Angela, at least there is no risk of public execution in front of others. We tested it. Who knew you had hidden a super transformation mode? Peter Parker growled very excitedly. But you didn't inquire about the Warframe eye. Obviously there is a precedent for stealth mode, you haven't learned well. Blame me? Kraft felt that he was wronged. The two were still college students at prestigious universities, and they were also hailed by the scientific community as genius teenagers after Tony Stark and Reed Richards. As a result. Just this intelligence. I don't care. You did it, it must be solved for me. Peter Parker stared at Kraft viciously and growled in a low voice. Okay. I want to find a way. Ouch, I'm so happy. Kraft wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes and smiled and got up from the ground. If this is something that happened recently, the solution is very simple. There is a pen-shaped amnesia in Kraft's dreams, which can erase his memory in a short time by flashing it at the target. But now that time has passed for too long, it is impossible to use this amnesia to delete the Flash people's memories of Peter and Harry's transformation. As for other devices used to modify memory, either side effects are too great, or they are more troublesome to make. There is obviously the most convenient way, isn't it? Why don't you ask Dad for help? Kraft asked suspiciously, it should be easy for him to erase memory. Huh. Peter Parker was confused. When did Uncle Martin master the ability to erase memories? Oh, yes. Peter doesn't know that Mind Gem is in Dad's hands now. Kraft patted his forehead, only then did he react. Actually, I don't know if Daddy can do it, Kraft shrugged. Martin hasn't asked to what extent Martin has the ability of Mind Gem. But in theory, there should be no problem. Aren't you fooling me again? Peter Parker looked distrustful. Kraft rolled his eyes and said, what's the point of me fooling you? And even if Dad can't do it, you can still ask Ancient One Magician for help. She must have a solution to this problem. Let me ask Uncle Martin first. The thought of letting an unfamiliar person know about his shameful experience with Harry made Peter feel uncomfortable, so he decided to try Martin Lee first. After talking with Peter, the two returned to the living room. At this time, Aunt May and Alice were ready for dinner, and the wall that was smashed by Rayleigh was also repaired by the small engineering robot under the command of Angela. After dinner together, Peter Parker eagerly pulled Martin Lee aside and asked him in a low voice. After getting his affirmative answer, he hurriedly led him to the Osborn building. Before leaving, Martin Lee glared at Kraft. Although Peter did not say too carefully, he still couldn't guess that Kraft had something to do with what happened before in Kraft's usual urination. There are ghosts. After Martin and Peter left, Kraft also bid farewell to Aunt May and Uncle Ben, and walked to his laboratory with his three younger sisters, a cat, a dog, and the soul of Ancient One. The research of soul gems still needs the help of Ancient One, and Rayleigh is a bit wild in the aliens. Angela is afraid that she can't be suppressed by herself, so Alice must also be upgraded so that she can intervene in Rayleigh's a little bit. Discipline. Otherwise, Kraft finally returned to the Earth, and all his time would have been spent on matters related to Rayleigh's aftermath. It doesn't take much time to upgrade Alice, but unlike Angela, she can't directly use the Rayleigh series of mechanical bodies, but she has many useless designs on her body, which can be used to replace other equipment. So after choosing for a while, Kraft simply stuffed her body with a few sets of power guides in a GN solar furnace, and a bunch of things that might also be useless. After changing her body, Alice wailed when she turned on the GN solar furnace. What is this? Brother. Alice, with glow-in-the-dark spots in her mouth and ears, looked at Kraft tearfully and shouted. Because Alice doesn't like to expose the identity of the robot, the GN solar furnace on her body is hidden by Kraft inside her body. It is usually not visible at all, but as long as Alice turns on the GN solar furnace, the fluorescent green particles will leak from Alice's ears and mouth. Ha 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 ha. Sister Alice, how funny you are. The heartless Rayleigh pointed to Alice, who was spitting green light, and rolled with a smile. Elder brother. The tearful Alice approached Kraft, and the glowing green particles kept flying out of her mouth and spilled on Kraft's face. Oh, GN solar furnace is like this. Kraft scratched his head and explained, anyway, this thing is for emergency use. Wouldn't it be fine if you don't open it normally? Woo. Alice then remembered that she had to turn off the GN solar furnace in her body first, and then still grumbled, puffing her cheeks and staring at Kraft. Brother, you must be bullying me again. This green light can definitely be hidden, right? Since Kraft had always teased Alice before, she didn't believe Kraft's statement at all. In the end, it was Angela who stood up to help Kraft prove that this dispelled Alice's suspicion. After sending his three sisters to play with two pets by themselves, Kraft turned his head to look at Ancient One, which had been waiting for a long time. Do you know how to use this stuff? Kraft took out an orange stone and handed it to Ancient One. This is Soul Gem. Ancient One had seen Kraft, who collected 6 infinite gems over the course of time, so he was not too surprised by the fact that he took out the Soul Gem, although his collection speed was a little bit beyond Ancient One's expectations. I seem to have forgotten to tell you. A distressed expression appeared on Ancient One's face. When too many infinite gems get together, it is easy to have some unprovoked disasters. Definitely is just a statement with no theoretical basis, but according to my observations, it is almost true. Ancient One paused and continued. Even if this legend is just a coincidence, but too many infinite gems appear on the earth, it is also easy to be coveted by external forces, such as Thanos, which you already know, so you'd better pay attention to it. Not just Soul Gem. Kraft scratched his head, showing a shy smile. The Power Gem is also in my hand. Ancient One. I just retired. New York, Avengers Building. Tony Stark, wearing the latest steel battlesuit, landed on the top platform of the building. He lightly patted the lead light on his chest and put the steel battlesuit away. Taking off the lead light on his chest and putting it in his pocket, Tony Stark walked along the platform into the Avengers Building. Tony, you're here. Bruce Banner, who has recently got together with Stark to develop Ultron, is the first to call him Roar. Where is the captain? Stark nodded to Dr. Banner as a response, then asked after scanning a circle. In the Avengers Building, most of the Avengers have already arrived. Nick Fury and Phil Coulson, as well as the agent team they later formed, have also arrived. Only Steve Rogers and Thor are not present. Thor has always been erratic. Even when he came to Earth, he would mostly talk to his astrophysicist's girlfriend, so he was usually absent from every meeting. Captain Steve has other things to do, so I won't attend this meeting for now. The one who answered him was Nick Fury, who was standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows and posing. He turned around and walked to the conference table solemnly, supporting the edge of the table with both hands, without giving Stark a chance to continue inquiries, and he spoke directly. Now that everyone is here, let's talk about the Mutant Brotherhood. Oh. Mutant Brotherhood. Hearing this name, Stark also forgot to continue to ask. The expression on his face became complicated. Proud as Stark, but he suffered several deflations on the 2 little guys, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, and he was also hit by Scarlet Witch's psychic attack and saw 2 illusions that made his mind confused. In Scarlet Witch's illusion, Stark first saw that his steel battlesuit was leaked out, which led to a crazy arms race in various countries, and then the whole world was caught in a continuous war. In the end, he could only watching all human beings die from their own weapons. Although he later separated from the illusion, Stark had to admit that things in the illusion were very likely to happen, which made him doubt whether his Ultron plan could really bring peace. However, just when Stark's hesitation was about to stop the Ultron project, he was once again hit by Scarlet Witch's illusion in a mission. In this illusion, the Earth was once again attacked by aliens. This time the army that attacked the Earth was stronger. The Avengers were no opponents at all. Tony Stark could only usher in another destruction of mankind in endless regret. Then Stark found out that the Ultron plan still had to go on, but he had to be prepared to deal with it completely. For this reason, Stark spent a long time refining the underlying logic program of the Ultron project, and added a lot of collars to it to prevent one day Ultron was seized of control, or suddenly out of control. Ends. Speaking of seizing control, the only person who can do this right now is Angela, who was made by the Kraft kid, right? She hasn't been to Jarvis for a while, and she doesn't know who is better now. Stark is still very confident in the current Jarvis. While making Ultron, he also optimized Jarvis in all aspects, and even rewritten a brand new system for him. Now Angela wants to break Jarvis's the firewall must first crack his new system. Stark. Have you ever heard of it? The black charcoal head Fury's roar call brought the meditating Stark back to his senses. I'm sorry. I was just thinking about some optimization problems for the steel battlesuit. Stark made up an excuse casually, and he shook his index finger near his temple. The inspiration of genius is always so caught off guard. So, our genius, have you thought of a way to deal with Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch? Nick Fury rolled his eyes irritably. No. Tony Stark shrugged helplessly. Actually, if these 2 people were taken out alone, they were both fairly easy to deal with. Although Scarlet Witch's spiritual ability is tricky, as long as you keep the distance, the threat is not great. No matter how fast Quicksilver is, lack of destructive power is always a problem. But when the 2 brothers and sisters started to cooperate, they became very confused. And even if you want to deal with them separately, it's very difficult. Bruce Banner added. Quicksilver is so fast, we can't hold him down. Actually, I'm very curious. Why did the two brothers and sisters target the Avengers? One of the members of Phil Coulson's team and a former member of the High Tide organization, Vibe Female Skies, suddenly asked. From their behavior, it doesn't seem to be an evil guy, it's more like seeking revenge.
That's exactly what I want to say. Nick Fury projected a piece of information on top of the conference table. Due to the previous Hydra incident, many of our information and intelligence sources were destroyed, so it took a lot of time to collect it. The information of these two siblings,
Petro Maximov and Wanda Maximov, Hydra's high-level baron, Strucker found survivors from the ruins of a terrorist attack, and gained extraordinary ability through Hydra's technological transformation. Nick Fury switched the screen projected on the conference table and finally fixed it on a photo of ruins. The center of the photo was the shell of a missile, and the name of the manufacturer on it was clearly visible. Stark Industries. FXXK. Tony Stark was silent for a moment before spitting out in swear words severely. Although he can argue that he has never sold weapons to terrorists, and that he who sells knives and kills with knives is not the same thing, Tony Stark did not intend to do so. Otherwise he would not shut down Stark Industries, the weapons department. For Tony Stark, he made a large number of weapons, and these weapons caused a large number of deaths of innocent people. This is a fact, so he willingly took responsibility for this. I will find a way to talk to them, Stark said with a serious face. Nick Fury nodded. His original purpose was also this. After Stark established contact with the Mutant Brotherhood, he could find a way to analyze their psychological conditions, and then design different solutions for them in a targeted manner. As for the safety of Tony Stark, Nick Fury still trusts his life-saving ability, and the two brothers and sisters are actually not bad guys, are they? Nick Fury, who is already thinking about how to incorporate the Mutant Brotherhood, feels that it is worthwhile for Stark to take a risk. Then the next thing is the second thing. Nick Fury turned off the projection, looked around the crowd, and then set his gaze on Peter Parker. If our intelligence is correct, Peter, is Kraft Lee back? Kraft? Who is that? The new member of the Avengers Falcon Sam Wilson is relatively unfamiliar with the name Kraft. Although he vaguely felt that the name was familiar, he didn't remember it all at once, so he turned to look at Hawkeye Clint and asked. For the name of Kraft Lee, Clint will definitely not forget, as long as he thinks of the puppet robot that appeared in the Battle of New York, and later Kraft's various Sorrow operations when solving the portal. Clint's face, the expression on the face becomes complicated. It's the pilot of the puppet in the Battle of New York. On the other side, Black Widow Natasha Romanoff's expression is also very exciting. Whether it's the question of whether he can cook at the first meeting, or his later act on the evil god Loki without saying a word, Natasha Romanoff is deeply impressed. Impression. So it was him. Falcon is not a primitive person. After Clint's explanation, he naturally remembered Kraft's identity. On the other side, the agents of the Phil Coulson team are also whispering. Unlike Falcon, the members of the Phil Coulson team are mostly young people who are familiar with the name Kraft Lee. What is the chief designer of Dreamland Toys Company? Vibe Female Sky confirmed to Phil Coulson excitedly that she is a loyal fan of Dreamland Corporation and Kraft. It's great. Dreamland Corporation hasn't released a new product for a long time. Ends. It would be great if it were just like this. Phil Coulson smiled bitterly and held his bald forehead. He is not only a toy designer, but also a super genius who doesn't lose to Stark. He made the Shining Locusts and Spider-Man battlesuits. Kraft is back. Tony Stark frowned, feeling a little dissatisfied. This brat, won't you call me Roar when you come back? And Bruce Banner quietly calmed Hulk in his body. Calm down, Hulk, he's not here now. Be quiet first. Nick Fury patted the table vigorously, quieting the noisy meeting room, and then continued to stare at Peter Parker with his one-eyed eye. Peter? S.H.I.E.L.D. actually did not find Kraft's whereabouts, but inferred it from some cobweb horse trails. Nick Fury asked Peter Parker only to make the final confirmation. He smiled bitterly at Harry. Peter Parker nodded helplessly. Yes, Kraft is back. Don't worry, I didn't think about targeting him. Nick Fury saw Peter Parker's nervousness, and pursed his lips soothingly. I don't deny that S.H.I.E.L.D. is very interested in his technology, but we are not. Idiot. Ah ha ha ha, Peter Parker laughed dryly. His nervousness just now was not because of Kraft's worry, not to mention Kraft's own ability. Kamar Taj's former supreme magician is still on his side. S.H.I.E.L.D. is still right now. Can Doctor Strange do nothing? But this kind of words that hurt Director Fury's face. Peter Parker is very emotionally intelligent and does not intend to say it. Maybe some of you don't know Kraft, you can take a look at his information first. Nick Fury turned on the projection again, replaced with Kraft and Martin Lee's information. So there is still a magic spear game? Interesting. Tony Stark knows Kraft better, so he is more interested in the spear game mentioned in the information. Is it another Hydra victim? I can understand his thoughts, at least he is not as extreme as my mother, is he? After seeing Kraft's childhood experience, Sky sympathized with him instead, because his mother had a similar experience, and she had some empathy. As for her teammates, they don't have so many complicated thoughts. They focus more on another matter. Kraft knocked on a spacecraft and left the Earth to explore space. This is so cool. As a genius scientist, Fitz also has unlimited yearning for space. I don't know what special materials and technologies he has obtained from the universe. It would be nice if I could communicate with him. Stop daydreaming. Didn't you see what it says in the information? Kraft doesn't like us official personnel, especially since we have been infiltrated by Hydra before. Melinda poured cold water on the excited young people. Oh. This is really a shame. So, what do you want to say? Fury. Stark leaned back after reading the related content of the spear game, set up Erlang's legs and asked, is planning to start a battle with the spear game? We and the spear game are not enemies. Nick Fury said insincerely, but he may also think that few people would believe this, and added, we are just competitors. So, we can't let Kraft's skills fall into the hands of the spear game. Nick Fury switched the projection on the desktop, which showed information about the moon and humans. After all, their migration movement was so great that even the spear game could not completely cover it. Although all the advanced technologies that the Inhumans mastered were acquired by the Spear Bureau, and this time Kraft returned from the universe, I don't know how many more advanced alien technologies he brought back. Nick Fury stared at Peter Parker. I hope you can persuade Kraft to share a part. It is not a good thing to let the Spear Bureau dominate the whole family. When Nick Fury said this, he completely ignored that before the establishment of the Spear Bureau, their shield was the only one. I will try my best. Peter Parker spread his hands and dealt with it casually. He didn't think Kraft would care about S.H.I.E.L.D., but he didn't say anything to hit Nick Fury. He wouldn't touch Kraft's brow anyway. In fact, Nick Fury, who is familiar with Kraft's characteristics, also knows that there is little hope. He just has dates and no dates to play 3 poles. It is definitely the best to get some skills. In fact, it is not a big problem. He can still seek a deal from the Spear Bureau through the pressure of the Security Council. In fact, S.H.I.E.L.D. has already obtained some inhuman technologies through this method. In addition, the screw in his hand also has some skills in his hands, but the group of guys regard these skills as the last straw, and they have been covering it very tightly. Nick Fury has spent so many years, and only a small part was pried out. If he could get more advanced alien technology from Kraft, Nick Fury would not bother to serve the screw people who would make an inch of it all day long. Black Elk Bar. This is a very humble bar in Brooklyn, New York. It is also one of Hydra's secret strongholds. Now it is the main gathering place of Mutant Brotherhood in New York. Scarlet Witch Wanda Maximoff sat on the bar, propped his cheeks with both hands, and sighed quietly. So, how did things get to this point? Wanda's beautiful eyes were full of confusion. Before, the brothers and sisters in Sokovia watched Kraft's hands to solve the Hydra in Baron Strucker's hands, but in fact they did not hate Kraft. Later, I learned about the experience of Kraft and Martin Lee as one of the reasons. More importantly, I was scared. But no matter what, they didn't have any idea of avenging Kraft and Martin Lee. However, the 2 brothers and sisters Maximoff did not let go of their hatred of Tony Stark, so they took some time to find some Hydra abilities who were not in Sokovia at the time, and then Wanda directly used their abilities to change their memories and let them for your own use. After gathering a group of initial members, they came to America to come to Stark for revenge. It happened that S.H.I.E.L.D. was cleaning Hydra. By mistake, their group was confused with S.H.I.E.L.D. in the Avengers. One frame. It's a pity that Iron Man was not there at the time, so Wanda and Pietro didn't hurt them after defeating the Avengers. Instead, they took the initiative to leave with their men, and incidentally abducted some of the remnants of Hydra. To be precise, it was entangled by them. However, under Wanda's spiritual ability, this group of Hydra who wanted to use supernatural powers as gunners became Wanda's lackeys, and contributed a lot of Hydra resources. The Black Elk Bar is one of them. In order not to equate Hydra with Hydra, Wanda and Pietro discussed it, and they re-established themselves and formed the Mutant Brotherhood. During this period, they fought against the Avengers several times and won. The result is that this organization, which was originally formed only to retaliate against Tony Stark, has attracted many supernaturalists to come and take refuge. Those villainous villains don't need to say much. Wanda and Pete Logan couldn't pay attention to them, but some of them are not bad guys. They are more forced by life. For example, Sandman Flint Marco, he just wanted to get money to treat his daughter. After Wanda and Pietro used Hydra funds to help him, he desperately followed the 2 brothers and sisters. In addition, there are Those who were forcibly arrested and became experimental subjects and later escaped. They were squeezed out because of inexplicable changes in their appearance. Ability lost control and caused damage when he first awakening. He was wanted by the authorities and had to flee everywhere. At the beginning, Wanda was soft-hearted and brought all these people under his command. Later, he found that the trend was gradually wrong and then stopped such behavior. However, at the moment's Mutant Brotherhood already has many members. In fact, most people's demands are similar to those of the two brothers and sisters, especially those experimenters who were snatched to do human experiments. Their idea is to make the group of people who don't treat them as human beings pay the price, because some of them are official experiments. So it is inevitable that there will be conflicts with S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers. In addition, there are a very small number of people who have more complicated ideas. They want to use the power of Wanda and Pietro to let the mutant or the supernatural person get the right. America has never lacked such human rights fighters, even mutants. These people actively connect with other members and want to normalize and institutionalize the Mutant Brotherhood. When Wanda and Pietro come back to their senses, they have formulated everything from the logo to the uniform, as well as the slogan and action policy. Fortunately, Wanda and Pietro have already seen similar fanaticism in Hydra. Knowing that this is not a good thing, so Wanda took action in time and used the spiritual ability to appease the instigated group of members, and then engage those few. Everything was kicked out of the Mutant Brotherhood. After reorganizing the Mutant Brotherhood, there was a little disagreement between Wanda and Pietro. The reason is that Tony Stark took the initiative to come to the door. He took the initiative to admit his mistakes to the brothers and sisters, and asked for their understanding. In fact, after the two fights with Tony Stark, Wanda, based on Stark's memory and subsequent information collected, has learned that those weapons were not sold by Stark, and he has already closed down the weapons department of Stark Industries. At the same time, after this conversation with Stark, she learned about his responsibility as a superhero, so she and Pietro naturally let go of their hatred of Stark, but did not agree to Stark's invitation to join Avengers. Because Pietro wanted to continue to lead the mutant companions to take revenge on the forces that conducted human experiments, and did not want to disband the organization of the Mutant Brotherhood. But unlike Pietro, who likes excitement, Wanda just wants to live a peaceful life as a normal person. Although Pietro has made it clear that Wanda can live the life she wants, how could she just leave Pietro, the only relative, so she eventually continued to follow Pietro to take care of the Mutant Brotherhood. Just maintaining the work of an organization, it is indeed a little difficult for Wanda, a little girl with little experience. Even if she has the assistance of those brainwashed Hydra agents, she still feels weak. Wanda sighed again with frowning brows, and leaned on the bar. Still thinking about Brotherhood? Sandman Flint came to the seat next to Wanda and sat down and put the drink in front of her. Uncle Flint, do you think it's really okay for us to go on like this? Wanda sat upright, took the drink and took a hard sip, then let out a long breath. Although Sandman Flint chose to stay in the Mutant Brotherhood to help out of morality and worry about these two young people, he, like his brothers and sisters Maximov, is not an educated person. His life experience also didn't help at all in how to develop the organization, so in the face of Wanda's problem, Flint had no choice but to smile. Wanda sighed again and stopped thinking about complicated things. In addition to Brotherhood, Wanda is still worried about Kraft, who destroyed the Hydra base. You must know that Kraft would go to Sokovia for revenge. What he did is no different from what Pietro and the others are doing now. So if Kraft still refuses to give up and wants to continue to avenge her and Pietro, she doesn't know how to deal with it. This is why she and Peterman knew about Kraft and Martin Lee, but did not invite them to join the Mutant Brotherhood. Fortunately, after such a long time, Martin Lee didn't move much, and Kraft disappeared for a long time, so Wanda was just a little worried and didn't take it too seriously. However, at this moment, Flint next to him suddenly turned his head and looked at the TV hanging above the bar. Oh. Dreamland is about to launch a new product again. I hope this new product is played by girls, and Penny is their loyal fan. Flint chattered a little when he talked about his daughter. However, Wanda didn't mind paying attention to Flint, because there was a figure she was still talking about on TV. The chief designer of Dreamland Toys, the famous young genius Kraft Lee, who disappeared for a while, reappeared in the public eye, and announced that there will be a brand new product launch 3 days later. The mentality of Wanda Maximoff at the moment is a little broken. Pietro took several members of the Mutant Brotherhood to an experimental base of Roxxon. Roxxon Energy is arguably the most mysterious company in America, although it was learned from the remnants of Hydra that they once had the right to speak in this company. But when those Hydra members were investigated by S.H.I.E.L.D. in the Avengers, Roxxon still stood firm, and all businesses were still proceeding in an orderly manner, as if those Hydra were temporary workers that could be fired at will. But this has nothing to do with the Mutant Brotherhood. Pietro and the others came here this time purely for revenge. Like many technology companies in America, Roxxon also conducts human experiments in secret. It's just that Roxxon is different from most companies. They didn't choose to catch ordinary people to experiment and then let them gain abilities. Instead, they directly targeted the abilities who already have abilities, or because of experiments by other companies. The resulting mutant person. In the Mutant Brotherhood, there are two supernatural beings who have been caught by Roxxon to conduct various brutal human experiments, and are often drawn blood. It is also thanks to S.H.I.E.L.D. that captured Hydra, and when they found Roxxon, they let the two seize the opportunity to escape. It is still unclear whether this experimental base was the same base at the time. After all, with the activity of the Mutant Brotherhood, many companies that conduct human experiments moved the experimental bases in time. But Pietro and the others don't care about so much. Since they found out that Roxxon is still continuing the human experiment, then naturally there is no discussion about it. As always, Isan and I went in to take the evidence, and then you received my signal before launching an attack. The supernatural being called Isan stood on top of Pietro's shadow, and then the whole thing turned into a black mist and sneaked into his shadow. Pietro nodded at the remaining teammates, and disappeared in front of them in a flash. When Pietro's figure appeared again, he was already standing in the Roxxon company's experimental base. The guards and alarm devices outside did not even notice his arrival. No matter how many times you watch it, you will be amazed by your speed, boss. Isan emerged from Pietro's shadow and praised sincerely. Stop talking nonsense, hurry up and take the evidence. Pietro's speed is not ineffective for all protections. He has no choice but to rely on Isan to sneak in through the gap to shoot in those completely enclosed rooms. Understand. Isan saluted Pietro with a nondescript military salute, and then got in through the crack of the door with the camera. After the first few sabotages were classified as terrorist attacks, Pietro and the others learned to collect evidence to prove their legitimacy, and then retaliate. Later, they also contacted a freelance journalist named Eddie Bullock and handed over all the evidence in his hands to him to expose, which gradually reversed the reputation of the Mutant Brotherhood. As I said before, America has never lacked human rights fighters. After these contents were exposed, demonstrations began in various parts of America, which also made the official a little restrained in dealing with the Mutant Brotherhood. This is definitely because Pietro and the others are currently exposing companies that are not deeply involved with the government, and the government is eager to get bigger and bigger, so that they have a chance to profit from it. Wanda and Pietro actually couldn't think about so much. Thanks to the analysis of the group of Hydra members controlled by Wanda, they gradually had a relatively reliable course of action. Nailed it. Isan got out of the crack in the door and said with the camera in his hand. Then. The action, officially begin. Pietro pressed down the detonating device in his hand and detonated the bombs he had planted. Boom. Hearing the explosion sound from Roxxon's experimental base, the Mutant Brotherhood members waiting outside rushed out from the hiding place, using their abilities to attack the guards outside. It's a Mutant Brotherhood. Although the group of troublemakers were kicked out of Brotherhood, the uniform they designed was adopted by Pietro and the others, so Roxxon's guard recognized the attacker at a glance. Then they started to fight back without hesitation. As the guards of the experimental base, they definitely knew what experiments were going on inside, so it was natural that they would be found by the Mutant Brotherhood. In fact, with the armed forces of these guards like Roxxon, it is not a problem to defeat a few mutants, even if most of the member ability that Pietro brought this time are suitable for combat. But these are based on the premise that there is no such fast person as Pietro. The ability of super speed is too bug. Even the superhero of the Avengers are stunned because of Pietro's speed. Roxxon's ordinary guards are even less likely to be able to withstand Pietro. They don't even know how they are knocked down. Under Pietro's leadership, the Roxxon company's experimental base was quickly breached, and they did not stay much. After destroying the equipment and materials inside, they quickly evacuated. The detained experimental subjects, Pietro and others, did not take control, but released them before leaving. It's not that Pietro and the others don't want to take in more companions, nor do they look down on the abilities of these people, but that someone has arranged inner ghosts in these subjects before. If Pietro is not fast enough, he will be attacked successfully. Ends. So the current Mutant Brotherhood is simply a quick fight, not procrastinating. You go back first, and I will see if I can squat to other people. Pietro did not leave with the others as usual, because every time there was such a large-scale sabotage, a nosy superhero would come, and his favorite thing to do was to humiliate them severely. After a while, he left. This bad behavior makes Pietro and most of America's superhero have a bad relationship. Even if he learns about the situation of the Mutant Brotherhood, he will still feel uncomfortable. Especially the Thunderbolt in the Fantastic Four. This grumpy boy and Pietro have already quarreled to the point where it can be said to be at odds. Probably because of the remoteness of Roxxon's base, or because the superhero guessed that this was the noise made by the Mutant Brotherhood, Pietro did not wait for others to arrive. Tisk. It's boring. Pietro shook his head, who had not succeeded in taunting him, and ran back at a speed that was normal for him. In addition to the career of the Mutant Brotherhood, Pietro's greatest joy is running. As a speeder, he can see magnificent sights that no one else can see when running, so he often goes out for a run when he is fine. It's really a pity that few people can appreciate such a wonderful view. While Pietro was immersed in the fun of running while feeling emotional, he suddenly heard a sound of da-da-da, footsteps coming from behind him, and he got closer and closer. Come on. In Pietro's stunned gaze, a little girl with purple hair wearing glasses raised her arms to the sides, and moved her short legs at a very fast frequency, rushing to her side in smoke all the way. Ha 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 ha. How are you? O'Reilly laughed and made a move to Pietro roar. Sir, there is an unknown speed ability in Missouri. Phil Coulson pushed open the door of Nick Fury's office and reported to him that he was talking while staring at the tablet in his hand. Oh, now it's in Oklahoma. Can you explain what an unknown super speed ability person is? Phil Coulson agent. Nick Fury is very dissatisfied with this unclear report. I'm not good, sir. Phil Coulson passed the tablet in his hand. The other party's speed is too fast, and the radar can't capture the specific identity. Sure, it's not Quicksilver. Now when it comes to speed ability, Nick Fury can first think of Pietro, one of the leaders of the Mutant Brotherhood. It shouldn't be, or it's not just him. Phil Coulson scratched his bald head and explained to Nick Fury. The speed of Quicksilver is a kind of super ability, so there will be no sound barriers, violent air currents and other phenomena that can happen under normal physical rules when running. However, the speed person that appeared this time was different. Not only was it accompanied by violent air currents along the way, sometimes it also smashed the obstacles in front of him in a very violent way. Fortunately, the person seemed to have a sense of measure, and did not cause any casualties. But it can also be seen that this person's speed ability is obviously not the same type as Pietro. If he insists on saying it, it is more like a purely physical speed ability. Although it is difficult for Phil Coulson to imagine what kind of person can have such speed, it is not impossible for the Superman to appear one after another now. In addition, although the SHIELD radar could not confirm the specific identity of the target, it also captured a total of 2 people running around America. The other one did not move so much while running, so it can basically be confirmed by the last Quicksilver Pietro Maximoff. So, the Mutant Brotherhood has another super speed ability? Nick Fury stretched out his hand and pressed his temple, and his head was huge. He wanted to use the call machine to call Captain Marvel back for help. One Pietro is enough for them, and another one can stand it. It's not certain that the other party is a new member of the Mutant Brotherhood. Phil Coulson agent comforted dryly. At present, the two of them are chasing each other. Maybe it's just for a while, wanting to compare speed or something. Do you believe this? Nick Fury glared at Phil Coulson. He didn't think that the 2 extreme speed ability guys would be so bored that they ran most of the United States just for the sake of a race. Then what should we do now? Tell the Avengers. Phil Coulson also felt that his reasons were a bit unreliable, so he touched his forehead awkwardly and asked for advice. At this speed, who can catch up? Nick Fury pointed to the tablet, and the images monitored by satellite radar showed that the 2 scurrying guys at the moment had already ran out of America's territory and began to spend joy on the Pacific Ocean. SHIELD's intelligence department also transmitted the scene of the shooting. The sea was split by some force, causing 2 huge waves separated from each other. Not far from the scene where Moses divides the sea, there is another one that is not too conspicuous. The white line of is advancing at the same speed. Watch it first. See what they want to do. Rubbing his eyebrows helplessly, Nick Fury sighed and ordered. Before they found a way to deal with the speed, all they could do with SHIELD was to monitor as much as possible. Ha 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 ha. In the Pacific Ocean, O'Reilly was galloping happily on the sea, and not far in front of her, Pietro also stamped and ran wildly. To be honest, Pietro didn't know why he was racing so desperately with O'Reilly. He just saw a little girl who was able to catch up with her speed. Suddenly her head accelerated when she got hot. And O'Reilly, who thought that Pietro was playing a ghost-catching game with him, naturally caught up with all his strength, as if he wouldn't let it go without catching Pietro. Then things inexplicably turned into a situation where the 2 chased and fled. In fact, Pietro thought about stopping, but before he slowed down a little bit and wanted to talk to this strange little girl, O'Reilly confiscated his footsteps and brushed past him. Then Pietro was thrown around by the violent air currents brought up by O'Reilly, and he also saw O'Reilly, who had confiscated his feet, smashed a boulder with his head. When O'Reilly emerged unscathed from the gravel and continued to laugh and rush towards him, The strong desire to survive made Pete Logan dare not stop his footsteps. He didn't even dare to take a rally to Wanda. Belt. Although her sister's ability is very strong, her reaction speed is not comparable to Pietro's. If the little girl turns her head to attack Wanda, it is impossible for her to react. And looking at the huge and devastating movement when Aurelie was running, Pietro felt that it was too dangerous to continue running around in the city, so he would take Aurelie to the Pacific Ocean. But this is not the way to go. Pietro wiped the sweat from his forehead as he ran. Although he had been working hard to exercise his ability during this time, his physical strength would not last long if he ran at full strength. Just when Pietro slowed down and wanted to discuss with this unknown little girl, she quickly approached herself with a cute smile on her face and crushed everything. Pietro, who was furry in his heart, immediately remembered the poor stone again, and quickly raised his speed again to prevent him from being touched by Aurelie. "Can you have a good talk?" Pietro yelled again, but before his voice reached Aurelie's ears, he was blown away by the violent air current around her. Pietro screamed hoarse all the way, and he couldn't make it. Aurelie stopped. With the passage of time, Pietro, who was about to reach its limit, felt that his legs had become heavier and heavier, and Aurelie's figure gradually approached him, and his heart was suddenly sad. His anti-hero career has just begun. Is he about to die in such inexplicable things? A small figure flashed past Pietro, who was wandering. He only felt a light slap on the back of his hand, and then heard the cheerful laugh of the little girl. "Ha ha 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 ha. I caught you. It's your turn to be a ghost." Watching the mysterious little girl rushing to the distance with boundless aura, Pietro fell into the sea for a while because of the slowdown. So after doing it for a long time, am I scaring myself? Pietro, who was choked by the sea for several sips because of his sluggishness, thrashed, rubbing his hair in angrily. "So why did I almost lose my life just now? Pietro, what's wrong with you?" When Pietro returned to his and Wanda residence in embarrassment, Wanda was shocked. She had never seen Pietro in this state. She rushed to Pietro's side and supported him, eagerly looking at his situation. Due to the severe mood swings, even crimson energy escaped from Wanda's body. "Don't worry, I'm not injured," Pietro comforted weakly. "I'm just running out of strength." After being helped by Wanda to sit down on the side seat, Pietro smiled bitterly and told Wanda what he had encountered today. "You mean, you met a little girl whose speed is comparable to yours?" After listening to Pietro's narration, Wanda's expression was a bit wonderful. It was precisely because she knew how exaggerated Pietro's speed was that she could hardly believe that there was a second person who could reach his speed. Is it the product of some human experiment again? For this kind of situation, Wanda can only think of human experiments, because they have seen too many such examples. "I don't know. After a bottle of energy drink, Pietro's state has also eased a lot." He scratched his head and said hesitation, "But I don't think it is very similar, because the little girl looks too simple." Whether it is volunteers like Wanda and Pietro who conduct human experiments, or those who are forced to conduct human experiments like other companions, their mental state will be somewhat problematic. And the little girl that Pietro met before was completely like a bear child who had never experienced any setbacks, had a smooth childhood, and was even a little spoiled, not like a mutant who came out of the laboratory. Anyway, let those Hydra agents check it out first. Wanda put his palm on Pietro's forehead, read Aurelie's appearance from his head, and planned to let those Hydra agents controlled by her to check. "In addition, I have something to tell you," Wanda said with a serious expression after retracting his hand. "I just saw Kraft Lee on TV." Yes. Pietro didn't worry about Kraft coming to them trouble like Wanda, but looked thoughtful. It's not that Pietro is confident that he can deal with Kraft with speed, but that he has other ideas. As a group of people destroyed multiple human experiment bases and witnessed all the tragic scenes, Pietro could better understand why Kraft had trouble with Hydra in the first place. "I'm going to find him." Pietro raised his head and said categorically. "You are crazy," Wanda screamed and looked at Pietro. "Although what happened back then has nothing to do with us, but how can we say that we have also hindered Kraft's revenge? Tony Stark can apologize to us for the weapons he sold, aren't we even worse than him as a playboy?" Pietro looked at Wanda calmly, and slowly expressed his thoughts. In fact, he had thought of looking for Martin Lee before then. It was just that although Martin Lee appeared occasionally, his whereabouts were uncertain. That's why it was dragged down. Now Kraft is coming back, and it is announced that a new product launch will be held soon. Pietro intends to take advantage of this time to talk to Kraft. But Wanda was still very worried. She could never forget the ruinous white light that Kraft had released. "Don't worry, I'm just asking for Kraft's forgiveness, not looking for death. If the situation is not right, I will run away." "I see." Wanda pursed her lips. She has always been used to following Pietro's actions. Since Pietro insists, she will not continue to stop her, I will go with you then. Pietro didn't stop Wanda. Anyway, if he wanted to escape, he would have no problem taking someone with him. Although he met a little girl who was comparable to him, he was still very confident in his speed. It's impossible to be that bad. Just ran into that little girl at the product launch of Dreamland, right? The flagship store of Dreamland Toys, Manhattan, New York. Today is the new product launch conference of Dreamland Toys. Almost all American media have gathered here, but the reason why these media will flock to it is actually not related to Dreamland Toys. After all, no matter how popular Dreamland's products are, there is no need for such multimedia people to gather together. It's just that the people Kraft invited this time are too big. Although Osborne Group and Stark Industries have had close cooperation with Dreamland Corporation a long time ago, at this press conference, Dreamland Corporation also invited Harry Osborn and Tony Stark, two billionaires who are superheroes, arrived at the scene. In addition, many consortium representatives and official personnel also appeared at the press conference. In this case, it is hard not to let America's media rush to it. Unexpectedly, he could invite so many people, it's a bit troublesome now. The Maximov brothers and sisters who did simple disguise mixed among the crowd and talked quietly. Many of the companies invited by the Dreamland Company were attacked by the Mutant Brotherhood. If they appeared rashly, they would be afraid of being attacked. Against. Why don't we go to the backstage to find him? Pietro suggested. Anyway, the press conference hasn't started yet. It's better to meet him directly and leave as soon as possible. It's not so good. What if he mistakenly believes that we are here to make trouble? It's better to wait until the press conference is over before going to him. Wanda was a bit hesitation. She was too impressed by the Kraft who destroyed the entire Hydra base, so she always became more cautious when encountering things related to him. While Pietro and Wanda were discussing what to do, Kraft was backstage making final preparations. You brat. Don't let me know when you come back. Tony Stark, who is not accustomed to waiting for others, naturally cannot stay in front and wait for Kraft to start. He rushed into the backstage with Pepper directly, and after seeing Kraft, he pretended to be angry and rushed forward. Rubbed his hair. Why informing you? Kraft pulled back the tousled hair, rolled his eyes and said, I didn't bring the alien army back to fight your Avengers. When Kraft said this, his eyes turned to Thor, who was in a suit and leather shoes, and Nick Fury, who seemed to have never changed in a black trench coat. Except for Bruce Banner and Steve Rogers, the other members of Avengers were uninvited. The reason why Bruce Banner did not come is of course needless to say, and Steve Rogers recently put all his energy on the whereabouts of finding good friend Bucky Barnes. I don't know what the hell Nick Fury was playing. He took all the Avengers and Phil Coulson and other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, and followed Tony Stark into Kraft's backstage. Kraft doesn't have a good opinion of Thor and Nick Fury, so when he saw them, he subconsciously said something ironic. Anyway, he didn't plan to have a good relationship with the two of them. Loki is now being held in Asgard's cell. This level of irony is like a breeze for Nick Fury, but it is different for Thor. It's just that the Asgard people were always at fault for the Battle of New York, so Thor can only suppress his anger to Kraft, said. Kraft put on an indifferent look, and puckered out his ears and said, I didn't say anything, why are you so excited? Seeing Thor still glaring at him, Kraft raised his chin. Why? Want to fight? Don't think you are a 1,000-year-old man, I dare not beat you. Then he looked at Jane Foster next to Thor and smiled sarcastically. Speaking of which, this ant's appetite is also great. The age gap of over 1,000 years is ignored. This is really true love. Jane Foster, who was still pulling Thor to prevent him from knowing Kraft, turned black for a moment, and subconsciously let go of the hand that was pulling Thor's sleeve. Kraft's words are really too heartbreaking. The age of the Earth and Asgard people has always plagued Jane Foster. Now that Kraft has uncovered it so eloquently, her heart is definitely not. Feel good. I want to educate you for your father. Thor, who was already a violent temper, couldn't bear it anymore, and wanted to pounce on Kraft with a roar. Sorry, I don't think my child needs someone else to educate. Martin Lee on the side gave Kraft an angry look, and then reached out a ball of black aura and hit Thor's body. I'm really sorry for hurting the people on Earth back then. As the Prince of Asgard, I am willing to apologize with death. Thor fell to his knees without saying a word, crying bitterly. Since acquiring the Mind Gem, Martin Lee has become more comfortable with his control of negative emotional energy. Even if you have already seen the relevant information in the information, the experience of Thor still makes the members of the Avengers feel a chill in their vests. This kind of unreasonable ability to destroy a person's will ability is really terrible. At this moment, a horse-faced man with curly hair in a red cloak came out. He pointed at Thor, who was kneeling and crying, and instantly relieved the negative emotional energy from him. Enough, Thor, We're here as guests, not here to make trouble. Strange held down Thor, who wanted to continue to get angry, and admonished in a deep voice. Sorry, I don't remember having invited you. Kraft rolled his eyes and said with no shame. However, Strange is worthy of being a student of Ancient One, and that light and breezy look is a complete learning. I saw him nod to Kraft lightly and said, please forgive us for being uninvited. I don't know why the Avengers came to you. I just want to ask you about Ancient One Magician matter. Oh, you are the Doctor Strange that Peter said. It was then that Kraft realized who this strangely dressed man with a horse face was, and at the same time noticed the eye of Agamotto hanging on his chest. It turned out to be the hapless guy who was found by Ancient One to top the pot. Kraft's gaze at Strange suddenly became pitiful, making Doctor Strange feel confused. But Kraft didn't expose Ancient One's plan. In any case, they helped him research Soul Gem, and they had always treated him well. Kraft had no reason to betray her because of a guy who didn't know him at all. What do you want to ask? Ancient One Magician and I are not very familiar, just because of infinite gems there is a little overlap. Infinite gems? Before Strange could speak, Nick Fury and Thor on the side were excited. However, Kraft didn't bother to care about these two people at all, and continued to fudge to Strange. Ancient One Magician was worried that I had problems with infinite gems, so I was always guiding me how to control it. The relationship is so simple. It turns out that it is. Thank you for your confusion. Strange looked calm. Since Ancient One Magician thinks you are qualified to have infinite gems, then I will not do more beak placement. If you need help, you can come to Holy Place in New York to find me. After that, he didn't care how Nick Fury winked at himself. He drew a circle, opened the portal and left here. He is not familiar with Nick Fury and has no obligation to do anything for S.H.I.E.L.D. In contrast, Kraft, who has been in contact with Ancient One, is closer to him. Rounding up the two can also be regarded as brothers. Ends. Seeing that Doctor Strange didn't give face, Nick Fury's face was so dark that he could hardly reflect, but he had nothing to do, because the magicians of Kamar Taj and S.H.I.E.L.D. were not the same system, and he couldn't control Strange at all. On the head. But he didn't continue to ask Kraft's meaning, because he knew it was useless. The kid Kraft was obviously very resistant to him in S.H.I.E.L.D. It would be better to let Stark and Peter be familiar with him in the future. Go and inquire slowly. In addition, based on the conversation between Kraft and Strange, he doubted that Kraft was able to take out so much black technology. Maybe it was related to infinite gems, which made him a little regretful for giving the space gem to Asgard. We are here, just worried that someone who doesn't open our eyes will provoke you, but since you don't welcome us, then let's say goodbye. Nick Fury's reason for coming here is definitely not as simple as he said. He will bring most of the Avengers, including Thor, who is the most uncomfortable with Kraft, mainly because he wants to see Kraft and Martin. What is Lee's specific attitude? Whether it is to accommodate Peter Parker and others in the face of them, or to clearly show an unwelcome attitude, different circumstances determine S.H.I.E.L.D's next plan for Kraft. After confirming Kraft's attitude, Nick Fury would naturally not stay to scold him. He calmly nodded at Martin Lee, and then left the backstage with his men and other Avengers. Thor looked at Martin Lee with fear, then gave Kraft a fierce look, and then dragged the worried Jane Foster to leave behind Nick Fury. Good job, kid. After those people left, Stark, who was still in the background, slapped Kraft with a smile. He didn't really like Thor, who was a brainless person. He could see Kraft let Thor deflate. It was for Stark. A very pleasant thing. Tony. Little Chilly felt that Stark's actions were suspicion of harming the child, and couldn't help but hit him lightly. Oh, okay. What are you going to publish this time? You even invited me specifically. Tony Stark shrugged helplessly, then changed the subject. Stark was also very curious about this question. He didn't think that Kraft called himself to participate in the press conference, and the release conference was a boring product. The product I am going to release this time is an epic-making product. Kraft is confident with his arms akimbo. This is a completely virtual world. In this era, all kinds of superhero and super criminals emerge in an endless stream, but compared with the large number of ordinary people, they are always a minority. It is basically impossible for ordinary people to experience the feeling of Superman, but Kraft standing on the stage spread his hands, and a machine that looked like a racing helmet was projected on the big screen behind him. With our newly developed Nerve Gear fully stealth machine, these are no longer a problem. In this completely virtual world, you can not only create machinery similar to Iron Man, awakening various abilities, but also learning magic, alchemy, and other legendary abilities. Kraft introduced the new products that Dreamland will release to the media in the audience. The purpose of releasing Nerve Gear is not to make money, nor to make a name. For Kraft, it doesn't really matter how well Dreamland is developing. The main reason he did this is Find someone to accompany Rayleigh. It was okay in outer space before, and it didn't matter if I caused some damage, but after returning to the Earth, I was frightened day by day, for fear that Rayleigh would destroy the Earth by accident. But it would be too pitiful for her to keep Rayleigh in outer space. Although Rayleigh is a strange bear kid who can enjoy a whole day with a stick, Kraft doesn't want to treat her like that. So Kraft spent a little time repeatedly researching Nervgear's technology, and even used Infinite Gem's ability, and finally made Rayleigh's power no longer become so exaggerated in the online world. Then Kraft launched the Nervgear helmet non-stop. Compared with the relatively rigid eye, it is natural that a living person is more suitable to play with Rayleigh. As for the content of the game, it's also simple. Just integrate the settings according to the content in the dream, and then throw these settings to the professionals to make a game background. With Angela in it, it's not like building a new virtual world. Minutes. After doing all of this, Kraft set up another Easter egg NPC role for Rayleigh in the game. The role setting is very simple. It is a mysterious little girl who can wander around in this world. Players only need to play with her and get different rewards according to Rayleigh's satisfaction. This will not disrupt the balance of the game, but can also find enough people to play with Rayleigh, and prevent the Earth from being destroyed. 3 birds with 1 stone. For the peace of the world, you all give me into the game to play with my sister. The press conference went very smoothly, especially after Kraft invited several reporters to experience the Nervgear helmet for themselves. They were so excited that they couldn't even talk about it. This is really an epic-making invention. A veteran reporter with trembling lips, holding a camera frantically filming the Nervgear helmet used as a display. Kraft's product this time can be considered crooked. With the emergence of more and more Superman types, the psychology of many ordinary people is actually very unbalanced. Whether it's a superhero or a supercriminal, or the recently emerged mutant brotherhood, who is both righteous and evil, the attitudes of ordinary people are afraid and jealous. They also want to have extraordinary skills, and they don't want to face it. There is no resistance to ability when supernatural ability. But this world is so unfair. Humans with special abilities are always a minority. They don't have this luck, and they don't have abilities to become Superman. Now that there is such a game that allows them to experience supernatural abilities, it will naturally make them do it. Crazy. Even the representatives of the consortium and scientists who were invited have shown great interest in Nervgear. In fact, it's second to them who don't play games. What these people want to know is whether this virtual world can simulate the reactions of various substances in the real world. To put it bluntly, I want to find a more convenient and cost-effective way to conduct various experiments. For the answer to this question, definitely does not work. It's a good thing that Kraft himself used it a long time ago, and he still waited for them to ask. To put it bluntly, the virtual world in Nervgear is generated based on the corresponding program. All the premises of the simulation are to have corresponding data. Those unknown reaction results cannot be simulated in the game. But even so, these people are still showing full interest in Nervgear. After all, this is true virtual reality. It is not the kind of VR technology currently on the market that only has visual senses, but has a full range of senses. Dive into technology. So even if they couldn't help their experiment, they still asked various questions around Kraft, and even Tony Stark, the usual central figure, was ignored. But at this time, Stark didn't care about what he was neglected. He was having fun in the virtual world with Little Pepper, 1 person and 1 helmet. Suddenly regaining the physique of an ordinary person, I am still a bit uncomfortable. Peter Parker and Harry Osborn also entered the game, and they were a little unaccustomed to moving their bodies. Compared with ordinary people, those who have undergone mutations or were born with a physique will experience a lot worse when they first enter the game. Even if it is to find someone to accompany Rayleigh to play, Kraft has no intention of disrupting the balance of the game. So all players have the same attributes after entering the game, which is undoubtedly the same for those who are above the average level. Kind of weakening. Ha 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 ha. Just as Peter and Harry were still experiencing various settings in the virtual world, suddenly there was a laughter that made Peter tremble from a distance. Ah, Rayleigh. Why are you here? Peter smiled dryly and greeted Roar with Rayleigh, who ran next to him, and then glanced at the text on top of her head. Good boy. Alale. There is a small line below the name. Play with her to get random rewards. My brother said there will be many people playing with me here. Rayleigh replied with a grin. Peter Parker instantly understood Kraft's good intentions. So what do you want to play? Brother Peter is here to play with you. Thinking of being in the virtual world, Peter Parker grinned and said to Rayleigh. Wrestling. Rayleigh raised her hands and shouted. Then Peter and Harry were thrown out by Rayleigh. Although Rayleigh's ability has been deliberately weakened by Kraft, it absolutely crushes the 2 first-level whiteboard players Peter and Harry in terms of attributes. It is normal for them to be easily thrown out. Ouch. Seeing the two flying out, O'Reilly tilted his head for a moment, then laughed and chased after him. Ha 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 ha. Wait for me. Kraft, I think you should give me a similar role. After the press conference, Tony Stark took off his helmet in the first sentence that he wanted Kraft to get him an official role similar to O'Reilly. Because he was bullied enough by O'Reilly in the game, he wanted to change into a steel battlesuit to find his place.
In addition, I don't think it's a good habit to hang up on my sister, it will teach her badly.
Stark glanced at the moment O'Reilly, who was standing next to Kraft obediently licking a lollipop, exhorted earnestly. It's definitely not that he himself was bullied and mentally imbalanced. Ha ha. Kraft laughed and said nothing. And Peter, standing behind Stark, hesitated to speak, not knowing how to explain O'Reilly's situation to him. Ah. It's you. At this moment, Quicksilver appeared in front of Kraft with Scarlet Witch, and then he saw O'Reilly next to Kraft at a glance, and couldn't help but scream. O'Reilly, who was seriously licking the lollipop, took a look at Quicksilver, and then pulled Kraft's sleeve. Brother, he is the big brother who played the ghost hunting game with me. I see. Kraft touched O'Reilly's little head. In fact, he didn't need O'Reilly's reminder. Angela had already told him about this before. After all, the noise during the race between the two was quite big, Angie. It also took a lot of effort to suppress the matter. Petro, Wanda. Why are you here? After talking with the two brothers and sisters, Stark's relationship with them is actually pretty good. In addition, the Mutant Brotherhood has reversed its reputation after some operations, so Stark occasionally contacts them. In fact, it was Stark's good teacher temperament, and wanted to guide the two brothers and sisters like Kraft. That. We are asking Kraft to forgive. Petro did not expect that the little girl who could not find information but could chase him around was Kraft's sister, but now he can't help but shrink back. He stepped forward to block Wanda behind him. Then explained his intention. Oh. This matter, it doesn't matter. Kraft waved his hand and said indifferently. Anyway, the culprit capital has been killed by me. As long as you don't bother me, I won't bother to care about you. Roar. The Maximov brothers and sisters all breathed a sigh of relief, because of the existence of O'Reilly. If Kraft wanted to trouble them, he really couldn't escape. Wait a minute. Tony Stark suddenly looked at Kraft with an unbelievable look. If I understand correctly, O'Reilly's speed is comparable to Pietro. She is the mysterious person who rampaged 3 days ago? Based on what O'Reilly said before and Pietro's reaction, Stark roughly guessed a truth that he couldn't believe. Otherwise, why do you think I have to make a game specially to find someone to play with O'Reilly? Stark's mouth twitched. So you launched this virtual game just to pass the time for your sister? Yes. Kraft nodded affirmatively, and everyone around him fell silent. On the day that Dreamland's press conference ended, all stores began to sell Nerve Gear helmets, and once this product was launched, it was strongly sought after by the general public. As mentioned before, ordinary people have always had a feeling of envy, jealousy and hatred for those supernatural abilities. The Dream World, carried in the Nerve Gear helmet, just like the name, gives them a chance to dream. In addition, Kraft offered a lot of discount in price in order to find enough people to accompany O'Reilly, so the Nerve Gear helmet was sold out on the first day of sale, and 1 week after the product was released. Here, they have been in a state of being out of stock. In addition, Kraft also arranged Iron Man, Spider-Man and other superhero in the virtual world, which are relatively close to him, as the Egg NPC, and the controllers are all himself. The main reason is that Tony Stark is really annoying, and Kraft thinks this is a selling point. So he simply arranged for him an official identity, and by the way, he also changed Peter and their roles. And these characters can be actively selected when they log in, and there are 2 situations where hero account and player account can be switched. Then, such a setting was unexpectedly welcomed by the masses. Fans of superhero are happy to communicate with idols in the game, and those black fans will try their best to attack these heroes. That's right. Kraft set them up as targets that can be attacked very well, and issued an announcement saying that defeating the corresponding hero has a chance to obtain their equipment or ability. Although the current level of the players cannot cause any damage to Stark for the time being, after the player's equipment and level are up, it will be no problem to kill these superhero once or twice in the game. Most people are very welcome to this setting, even Stark himself likes it very much, because as long as he makes a new battlesuit, he can send the data to Kraft, and then test its performance in the game, although it is realistic. There are still some differences in the situation, but it is always a way to confirm. But Kraft's doing this also made a superhero not included in the game feel uncomfortable. Johnny Stone, nicknamed Thunderbolt, is the brother-in-law of Mr. Fantastic Reed Richards, a member of the Fantastic Four. Although the Fantastic Four can be considered in the superhero circle, their reputation is actually not that great compared with other superhero. Except for the leader, Reed Richards, who often makes troubles because of scientific research, the main reason is the guy called Thunderbolt. Johnny Stone is a typical American young man. After he obtained super ability, he swelled very badly. Not only did he use his ability to cause troubles, he also liked to find other superhero to compete with him. As the most wealthy and famous superhero, Tony Stark was naturally not caught by the Thunderbolt, but he was so stunned that he encountered Stark and could only say that he was beaten badly.
In addition, Stark was originally not a good-tempered person. After beating the Thunderbolt, he ridiculed him very viciously. In the end, it was Dr. Richards' face to let him go.
However, Firebolt not only did not learn a lesson from this, but instead hated Tony Stark. Not only did he open the trumpet Black Iron Man on the internet, he also often compared Stark with Stark on various occasions. So after discovering that Iron Man, a nasty ghost, appeared in his favorite virtual game, Johnny Stone sent an email to Dreamland Toys, hoping to add a hero character to him. It's just that Kraft didn't see the email at all, and was treated as spam by Angela. As a result, Johnny waited at home confidently for several days. He didn't see himself and the Fantastic Four characters being put into Dreamland. Instead, Quicksilver Pietro and his sister, who had enemies with him, were released. Went in. The game even added a neutral camp called the Mutant Brotherhood, and a series of side missions. The content of the missions is basically similar to what Brotherhood does in the real world. This was added by Kraft after knowing what Pietro and the others were doing recently, after consulting Pietro and their consent. But this time Johnny Stone couldn't sit still at all. He was originally impulsive and became more reckless after acquiring super ability. He felt that Kraft was helping Stark and Pietro, who had had a feast with him, against him. So Johnny didn't even think about it. He turned into a burning man and soared into the sky, flying towards Kraft's residence. A burning figure crossed the New York sky, flew over Chinatown, and fell towards Kraft's residence. Boom! Johnny fell to the ground suddenly and landed in the backyard of Kraft's house with one knee. Alice, who was humming a song and taking care of the flowers and plants in the backyard, was startled by the thunderbolt from the sky. She raised the watering can to block her in front of her, and looked at the uninvited guests in front of her vigilantly. The little black cat Beja, lying at her feet leisurely basking in the sun, blew up the hair all over her body, arched her back and let out a low growl at the uninvited guest. Johnny Stone, who had extinguished the flames on his body, stood up and saw Alice, who was staring at him in a daze. He suddenly felt that his eyes were bright, and he had never seen a cute girl like Alice in such a soft and cute style. The associations are still very fresh to him. It took less than half a second, and Johnny thought he could put the matter of finding Kraft first, and planned to pick up a girl first. He wiped the bangs on his forehead, and then showed the smile of a standard sunny boy. "Hello, beautiful." "Ah. It's a robbery." Alice, who had been stunned for a long time, screamed while holding her cheek. "Huh. No. Wait, this is a misunderstanding." Johnny hurriedly wanted to explain, but saw the black cat with the red scarf beside the cute girl, covered with a layer of black armor with a sense of technology. "Go to hell." Beja rushed towards Johnny Stone like a sharp black arrow. Unsuspectingly, he was scratched on his thigh by the little black cat with a paw, tearing out 3 long scars, and red blood went straight out. "Ah. You damn cat." How could the arrogant Johnny Stone accept the fact that he was scratched by a cat? He instantly put the matter of picking up girls behind his head and turned into a fireman again, raising his hand to be a fire to Beja go. Beja is wearing Kraft's special armor. This level of small fire group poses no threat to her. She doesn't even need to turn on the energy shield. The thunderbolt attack hit her without even a mark. "Leave. Eat me. Meow, fist." Beja sprinted around the thunderbolt flexibly, leaving a scratch every time she passed him. Pili Huokong had a strong body, but Beja was beaten with no power to fight back. None of the fireballs thrown out could hit the target, but instead blew up the Kraft's backyard. "Ah. My flower garden. And vegetable plot." Alice on the side screamed. She is basically taking care of this back garden. She has arranged it according to her own preferences for a long time. Usually, even a Rayleigh will pay special attention to it and not damage it here. However, John Nico didn't know this, and even if he knew it, he wouldn't care. He just wanted to burn the hateful black cat in front of him to charcoal. In fact, Beja's claws were not scratched very deeply. Although the appearance of the thunderbolt looked very embarrassed, it was actually just some skin injuries, and there was no worry about his life. It hurts. Not only is it painful, but it also hurts self-esteem. Johnny Stone, one of the dazzling Fantastic Four. He was beaten up by an unknown little black cat. Even if the cat was wearing a battle armor, it would be too embarrassing to say it. At this time, Thunderbolt suddenly remembered the short-lived Dogman from the past, and it was said that it was a pet dog of the Lee group, but the dog man appeared for too short a time, and the recent superpowers have emerged in endlessly, so related the news soon fell silent. However, whether the little black cat in front of him is the companion of the dogman, even the cat can't fight this kind of thing. It is absolutely unbearable for the Thunderbolt with the burden of idols. As long as Thunderbolt thinks that he is likely to be laughed at, his naive self-esteem bursts out, and as his emotions gradually become agitated, the flames on his body become more and more bright. The energy detectors on Alice and Beja also sounded an alarm at the same time, notifying them that there was a large amount of energy gathering in the Thunderbolt, and it might burst out at any time. Meow light. The tip of Beja's tail aimed at the Thunderbolt fire, emitting a blue light, and the Thunderbolt fire also raised his hand to emit a flame ray. The temperature was far higher than all the fireballs just thrown, and the blue light was swallowed directly, and the castration hit Beja's body unabated. Although Beja was blown up somersault, she didn't suffer any damage, and then she continued to attack the Thunderbolt a few times, but was blocked by the rapidly rising temperature. What should I do now? Alice was in a hurry. She didn't worry about herself, but the house behind her could not withstand this level of energy explosion, and Kraft ran to Aurelius to transform the Dark Star at this time. Angela, go and inform brother. Let him think of a solution. At this moment, Alice can only ask Angela, who is everywhere, for help. You don't need to bother brother for this kind of little thing, Angela calmly commanded. Don't you have the force guide that your brother installed on you? It's good to have an anti-magic domain against that Burning Man. The effect of the anti-magic domain can be effective for all energy release skills, whether it is the mysterious side or the technology side. This is the result of Kraft's repeated experiments and tests. Oh, all right. Only then did Alice calm down, and stretched out her palm at the Thunderbolt that was emitting a lot of light and heat in front of her. Hey! Under the dazzling firelight on Thunderbolt's body, the red light in the anti-magic realm was not eye-catching, but at the moment it appeared, the flame on his body dimmed. What happened? The flame on his body went out inexplicably, and Johnny Stone, who was covered in cat scratches, had a dumbfounded expression, and he hadn't realized what was going on right now. What did you do to me? After trying several times and failing to release the flames, Johnny suddenly panicked. After losing the flame ability, Johnny Stone was just an ordinary person with a little scientific knowledge, let alone Beja wearing a battle armor. He might not be able to fight even a fierce ordinary wildcat. What's more, most of Johnny's pride and arrogance today are based on his being a super ability, and now his ability has suddenly disappeared, making him feel at a loss. However, Alice didn't have a good face for this guy who broke into her house suddenly and did damage, and she didn't intend to answer his question at all. If it weren't for Angela's reminder, her house would be bombed by this robber, gone. Alice angrily, roar grabbed his left hand, then pulled it off with a strong pull, revealing the barrel of the gun hidden inside. Go to hell. Badass. A string of electric shock shells fired from the barrel and hit Johnny Stone, the Six Godless Master. A burst of crackling lightning flashed, and the famous Thunderbolt fell to the ground with foam. Brother, Kraft went through the portal and returned to the earth. What he saw was the tearful Alice leaping towards him, and then pulling the corner of his clothes as if he was wrong. What happened? Reaching out and patted Angela's little head, Kraft asked confusedly. Our backyard was blown up. Alice pouted and complained to Kraft. Who is so bold? Kraft was taken aback. He and Martin Lee's identities were not known to many people, but they were not too few, and even if they were not open to eyes, S.H.I.E.L.D. would usually come forward to solve them. This time they were beaten to the house. It's really a very rare situation. It's the Thunderbolt in the Fantastic Four. Alice usually likes to watch soap operas. She doesn't pay much attention to these superheroes, so this question of Kraft is answered by Angela. Fantastic Four? Thunderbolt? Although Kraft had heard the name of the Fantastic Four, he left the Earth not long after that, so when Angela mentioned the name, Kraft could not even remember who they were. The Fantastic Four is a small superhero team headed by Dr. Reed Richards, with a total of 4 members, Mr. Fantastic Reed Richards, the invisible female Susan Stone, and Johnny C. Tong, Ben Graham, the Stone Man. Angela explained to Kraft, while projecting the 4 people's video materials in front of him. They were the group that carried out cosmic storm observation on the spacecraft launched by the Life Foundation for the first time, but there was something wrong at the time, which caused them to be affected by the cosmic storm, and their bodies would mutate. After Angela's reminder, Kraft remembered who they were, mainly because he still had a deep impression of Reed Richards, the Doctor of Bankruptcy. As for the other 3 members, Kraft started from one I didn't pay much attention at first. So what kind of Thunderbolt is this? Is it the wrong string that he ran to our house to make trouble? In Kraft's impression, he seems to have nothing to do with them. You have to say that Reed Richards still has some impressions, but what the hell is this Johnny Stone? Kraft only knew that there was such a person today. If I'm not wrong, probably related to Dream World. Angela thought for a while, and told Kraft about the email she sent from Thunderbolt that was treated as spam. Is this guy's brain sick? The corners of Kraft's mouth twitch. Is this kind of person a superhero? However, what Kraft doesn't know is that although the Fantastic Four's reputation is not as good as other superhero groups because of Thunderbolt and Mr., they were all teenagers with similar personality to Johnny. This group of people put themselves into the identity of Thunderbolt, just like his style of acting as a superhero, but without any scruples. How is that idiot now? Kraft scratched his head speechlessly. Although he didn't want to pay attention to this inexplicable guy, he couldn't just leave it alone. I was injected with sleeping pills and put in a cell in the laboratory. I am still asleep now. Well, let's throw it there first. I guess S.H.I.E.L.D. will find a relationship and come to find people after a while. Kraft frowned suddenly when he said this. Strange, when Thunderbolt came to trouble me, S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't come forward. Forget it. It doesn't matter. After thinking for a while without a clue, Kraft didn't bother to care about him. Anyway, even if S.H.I.E.L.D. came, he didn't plan to hand over the Thunderbolt. I bullied my sister. Still think about it? I won't kill you. Kraft curled his lips and turned his head to accompany Alice to clean up the backyard that had been battered by the Thunderbolt. Sir, the movement in Kraft's house has stopped. Johnny Stone has not been there. He should have been imprisoned by Kraft. Nick Fury nodded his head silently after hearing the report from his subordinates. Since the last press conference confirmed the Kraft family's attitude towards their S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury has already begun to calculate them. According to Kraft's character, he is actually very easy to conflict with others, but most of the time he has not had time to conflict with others, and the other side has been stopped by S.H.I.E.L.D. But Nick Fury doesn't plan to let those idiots who only think about their own interests go to Kraft to find death. Firstly, it has no effect, and secondly, this is likely to cause the Spear to intervene. But if the conflict with Kraft is a superhero like Thor, this situation is more of a personal grievance. As long as the conflict reaches a certain level, their S.H.I.E.L.D. will have an excuse to intervene, using their S.H.I.E.L.D. means. Should be able to get some benefits in it. Originally, Nick Fury intended to make the relationship between Thor and Kraft continue to deteriorate, and he has already done so, but who would have thought that there would be a sudden burst of fire? So S.H.I.E.L.D. smoothly replaced the Executor with Johnny Stone, and compared to Thor and Asgard behind him, the Fantastic Four, the local hero team in America, is better, even if there is a problem with the plan. S.H.I.E.L.D. also has ability to suppress them. But Reed Richards is a clever man, so Nick Fury didn't intend to do more to let him find out the clues at first. After the conflict between the two sides, it was the time for their S.H.I.E.L.D. to secretly intervene. Then, now just wait for the Invisible Girl to find out that her brother is missing. Nick Fury raised the corners of his mouth, and the appearance of the Thunderbolt was simply a gift from heaven to S.H.I.E.L.D. Among the Fantastic Four, Dr. Richards lacks emotional intelligence, and the invisible female Susan is a helper, but the only more normal voice is the lowest. In addition, the Kraft kid is an unreasonable bear kid who wants to stir 3 points. Right now, this matter is still irrational. With Kraft's weird temper, it is absolutely impossible for the two sides to calm down at the beginning. Sit down and talk. And Dr. Richards is also a well-known genius scientist. He should not be inferior to Kraft in terms of black technology. Even if Kraft has nothing to gain by then, S.H.I.E.L.D. can still be greedy of technology from the Fantastic Four. Good luck. If you can even eat two ends. Simply perfect. Really, I didn't even think of a Fantastic Four that was more suitable for planning. It was really a mistake. Nick Fury sighed in his heart. They had wasted a lot of resources in Thor's place before, but they had little effect. It's not that the action was ineffective. In fact, under the operation of S.H.I.E.L.D., Thor was already suffocating Kraft, but now that Jane Foster is breaking up with him, he has no time to find Kraft. Trouble. Nick Fury is also very speechless about this. He is a 1,000-year-old old man who is still so emotional, but otherwise, he can't easily arouse Thor's anger. Definitely, Nick Fury is surprisingly consistent with Kraft on the point of despising Thor. Nick Fury waited and waited for several days, until Kraft was about to forget this fellow. The invisible woman Susan finally realized that something was wrong. It's not that Susan doesn't care about her younger brother, but that Johnny is a man. Susan, who is a sister, can't control him all the time. What's more, she is living with Reed now, not usually. I live with my younger brother, so it's normal to react slowly. It's ironic to say that Susan would have noticed something happened to Johnny, or it was because of the calm of the last few days. She was not called for because her brother was making trouble. Susan called Johnny when she was curious, and then she found out that the phone was calling nowhere. Reed. Something happened to Johnny. Susan hurriedly found her fiancé. I said you should take care of him, Susan. What's wrong with him again? The stone man who was helping in the laboratory said in a very contemptuous tone. Although he is a companion, the relationship between Ben and Johnny is not very good. He is often ridiculed by Johnny for his mutated appearance, and he is also subjected to various pranks. If it were not for the face of Reed and Susan, he would have been the bastard was beaten. Ben was right, Susan, we can't let Johnny go on like this anymore. Reed also had a headache for his brother-in-law. He himself had offended a lot of people for cheating on customers. After Johnny got the ability, he offended a group of people for him. How much more between superhero? Few have some connections, and their Fantastic Four is the least popular group. I will definitely discipline him in the future, but the problem now is that Johnny is missing. Susan was too anxious. She also knew the virtue of her brother. Now that he suddenly lost contact, he must have encountered some stubbornness. It would be okay if he was held back by someone, but in case it was a bad temper. Thinking of this, Susan became even more anxious, and hurriedly pleaded. Reed, you must think of a way to find Johnny first. Disappeared? Reed's mind is still very good. He also instantly thought that John 90 had a hard stubble. After all, he still felt distressed for his fiancée, so Reed started searching for John New's whereabouts without saying a word. Then Reed quickly found out where Johnny was going. After all, S.H.I.E.L.D. did not block this news, and Angela didn't think it was a big deal. Chinatown. What did Johnny go there for? Ben looked at Johnny's whereabouts displayed on the screen, scratching his rocky head with some doubts. But the expression on Reed Richards's face is not so good. Obviously he knows something. Reed? Susan saw that her fiancé hadn't moved after watching the computer screen change color for a long time, so she couldn't help but urge. A while ago, Johnny called me. Reed sighed and explained with a wry smile. Said that there have been many superhero accounts in the popular Dreamland world recently, and our Fantastic Four should not be left behind. I asked me to contact Dreamland to create a hero account for everyone, but I refused. So he just went to the door to find the boss of Renmingjing Company. The stone man made a disdainful sneer. It's like something that idiot can do. It's not the time to talk coldly, Ben. The expression on Reed's face became more bitter. According to the information I have obtained, the two fathers and sons of the Lee family are not simple, and Kraft has a weird temper. I'm afraid it's not that easy to solve. Then Reed saw that Susan was about to cry, and quickly comforted. But they are not bad guys, so Johnny shouldn't be life-threatening. You can rest assured. Susan felt a little relieved now, but still urged Reed to negotiate with Kraft, wanting to bring Johnny back. If I want to say it, I should make him suffer. Ben murmured from the side. Now that he knew that Johnny wouldn't be in any danger, Ben wanted to keep him closed for a while, so that he could be cleaned up for a while. I will try my best. Reed ignored Ben's muttering, soothed Susan and picked up the phone. It is not difficult to get the contact information of Kraft and Martin Lee, but how to persuade them to let Johnny go. Kraft is also well known for not waiting for whites and blacks, and negotiating with a willful older child is certainly not as simple as negotiating with an adult, so after thinking about it, Reed dialed Martin Lee's cell phone. Hello, this is Martin. After the call was connected, Martin's voice came, but his voice was a little fuzzy, as if he was in a noisy environment. Hello, Mr. Lee, this is Reed Richards. Reed Richards. Martin Lee, who was experiencing the cultural differences that are very different from the Earth on Contra Shing, recalled for a moment, and then suddenly said, It turns out to be Mr. Fantastic. What can you do with me? Ends. Thanks to the always open portal and the quantum communication technology that Kraft learned from the Interstellar, otherwise Reed would not be able to get through the call of Martin Lee, who was already outside the Earth at the moment. It's like this. Reed resisted the embarrassment in his heart and told Martin Lee about Johnny's shame. So, can you please return Johnny to us? I will educate him and make up for it. Sorry, I may not be able to help with this. I have not been in America at all these days. Martin Lee curled his lips, not to mention that he was not on the Earth these days. Even if he was staying at home at the time, he didn't plan to let Johnny go so easily. You know, according to America's law, if the other party breaks into the home and confirms that it can pose a threat to himself, the owner has the right to fight back or even kill the other party. Mr. Fantastic wanted to redeem Johnny with a fluttering sorry sentence. It's just a pipe dream. Give you a face. But Martin Lee also noticed something wrong. In this case, isn't S.H.I.E.L.D. usually the first to come forward? After hanging up Reed's call, Martin Lee thought for a while and felt that there seemed to be something tricky inside, and then asked Angela to find out about the situation. After knowing that S.H.I.E.L.D. had done nothing in this matter, Martin Lee couldn't help but frown. It seems that Kraft offended S.H.I.E.L.D. at the last press conference, and they obviously will no longer help mediation. Martin didn't think that Nick Fury would even be happy to see Kraft clash with other superheroes, but thought he had a fight with S.H.I.E.L.D. Fine, it's not a big deal anyway. As his control of Mind Gem became stronger, and after visiting a Lailstar, Martin Lee became more and more confident. There is almost no threat to him and Kraft on the Earth. So don't worry at all. Throwing this matter aside, Martin Lee put an extraterrestrial girl in his arm, and continued to learn cultural knowledge that was different from the Earth's civilization. After closing the door with Martin Lee, Reed Richards had no choice but to dial the number at Kraft's house. However, at the moment Angela had already known through the internet that he had called Martin Lee, and had already notified Kraft. Should that guy be starved to death, right? After Kraft heard Angela's reminder, he suddenly remembered that there was still a fireman thrown in his laboratory. Don't worry, brother, I inject him a nutrient solution every day. Angela asked for credit. That guy is still alive and trying to escape from prison. It's a lot better with some tranquilizers. Good job. Kraft scratched his head. Although he didn't think there was anything wrong with Angela's approach, he always felt that something was wrong. Hey, I also learned the methods from those mental illness clinics. Okay, now Kraft knows what's wrong. But it doesn't matter, anyway, in Kraft's opinion, there is indeed something wrong with that Thunderbolt's brain. Brother, Reed Richards is calling. Do you want to get through? Take it. Listen to what he wants to say. Kraft pouted his lips and replied indifferently. But in his mind he had already planned to wait to make things difficult for Dr. Richards. Skin color issues are trivial matters. Although Kraft is a little colder towards non-Asian people, it is not unreasonable. The point is that you, Reed Richards, wanted to redeem your brother-in-law, but you didn't come to the door in person. You just wanted to release Kraft when you hung up the phone. It's too beautiful, right? My Kraft doesn't want face? Kraft, thinking so, connected Reed's call. Hello, this is Reed Richards, I'm looking for Kraft Lee. Reed on the phone was still very polite, but Kraft was already preconceivedly unhappy with him, and his tone was naturally not so polite. I am. Finally remembered to find your brother-in-law? We also found out that Johnny was missing. Reed explained in a slow tone after choking. I'm very sorry. Johnny's personality is more impulsive, and he does things without thinking about it, which has caused you trouble. We will educate him well. Wait a minute. Kraft stopped Reed Richards' tirade. I didn't seem to say I want to return that guy to you, right? We will give you enough compensation. Facing Kraft's difficulties, Dr. Richards is still full of confidence, and he feels that the technology in his hand is still very attractive. It's just that Kraft's answer was beyond his expectation. But I don't need anything, and I don't need any compensation. Then what do you plan to do with Johnny? Reed Richards became nervous. Although he was wrong first, it is illegal for you to seize it privately. According to America's laws, Mr. Johnny Stone should have stayed in the cell long ago. Kraft sneered at what Dr. Richards said. In fact, it is not only America. The laws of all countries often deal with special cases when facing superpowers. In fact, after Angela locked up Johnny, he just notified Kraft, and then he knew that there was such a thing, how to deal with the fireman. He hadn't thought about it before. What the hell do you want? Johnny was just impulsive. We have promised to compensate you for your loss, don't go too far. As a genius scientist, Reed Richards is usually a very arrogant person. With the consumption of patience, his tone gradually became bad. Well, to be honest, I haven't thought about it before. Kraft rubbed his chin, and suddenly his inspiration flashed. Yes. After I deprive him of Mr. Stone's ability, I will return him to you. What? You can't do this, Reed shouted in shock. Why not? In the face of a criminal who broke into your own home, the capture of his weapon is a normal operation, right? According to America's law, I can even kill him on the spot. After Kraft finished speaking, he ignored Reed Richards' screaming roar, and hung up the phone. Go. Let's go to the laboratory. Kraft summoned his armor and began to leap. Reed, how is it? Susan, who had been in a hurry for a long time, saw Reed Richards ending the call and hurriedly stepped forward and asked that Reed's yelling appearance just now didn't look like a good development. Kraft said that he will be returned only after he has been deprived of his abilities. Reed Richards frowned and replied, in fact, as far as he is concerned, this kind of scheme is still acceptable. After all, Johnny caused himself too much trouble because of his ability. If he can return to normal people are also a good choice. The only thing that worries Reed is whether this deprivation of power will affect Johnny's body, and if Kraft can successfully deprive Johnny of his powers, wouldn't their Fantastic Four be Kraft? Are you scheming? So Reed Richards still wanted to bring Johnny back. He thought he could discuss with Kraft and let him deprive Johnny of his ability. And the invisible woman Susan didn't think so much. How can he do this? This is a violation of human rights. Susan Stone screamed and grabbed Reed Richards's hand and ran out. We have to stop him quickly. Isn't that good? The Stone Man would have liked this kind of thing to happen. Johnny caused so many things because of his abilities. It might be a good thing for him to remove the abilities. But this kind of thing shouldn't be done by others. Reed Richards calmed his fiancée while analyzing his considerations with Ben. Well, what you said makes sense. Although he hated his own mutation at the beginning, as the Fantastic Four's reputation gradually increased, he was already enjoying it. At the same time, Ben also became more and more enthusiastic about the Thunderbolt that has been hampering the Fantastic Four's reputation. More and more dissatisfied. So although I wanted to teach Johnny a lesson, I also felt that if their Fantastic Four's weaknesses were mastered by outsiders, it would not be a good thing. Do you have to do this? Susan is still a little unbearable, but she knows how important her brother regards her own abilities. Depriving Johnny of his abilities, it must have been a big blow to him. Johnny should indeed be educated. Reed Richards said to his fiancée, partly persuading and partly comforting. After Johnny learns well, we can return ability to him, so we must save him from Kraft first. Susan nodded silently. She actually knew her brother's problem, but she was always reluctant to discipline him. After persuading Susan, Reed took her and Ben in the car and drove to Kraft's house. How is the situation? Dr. Richards has left his laboratory and is heading towards Chinatown. The SHIELD agent, who had been monitoring the movements of Reed Richards, reported to Nick Fury. Let the Phil Coulson team on standby in Chinatown pay close attention to Kraft's residence and laboratory, and report the situation to me in real time. Nick Fury raised his mouth slightly, and the Fantastic Four finally started to act according to his plan. Then, as long as he seized the opportunity to intervene in their conflict, he would definitely be able to gain some benefits. But sir, Kraft didn't leave his residence, why should he monitor his laboratory? Faced with the inquiry of his subordinates, Nick Fury frowned. Because of the cleanup of Hydra, SHIELD was seriously understaffed, so during this period, many new low-level agents were recruited. It's barely enough to do things alone, but the experience is very inadequate, and his brain is a bit strained. However, Nick Fury explained to him patiently. After all, the most experienced agents are all newbies. Now SHIELD has insufficient staff and can only be trained slowly. Although there is no definite evidence, Kraft should have teleportation and invisibility technology in his hands, so he is likely to have been transferred to the laboratory before we knew it, otherwise it would not explain why we have not seen it. Get Johnny Stone away at Kraft. I see. The agent suddenly realized that the look in Nick Fury's eyes was like a mountain looking up, making Nick Fury very embarrassed. After that, it was as if a college student explained an addition and subtraction within 10 digits, and then was admired by a primary school student. There was no sense of accomplishment at all. Cough cough. Nick Fury cleared his throat and ordered the agent. Wait, if Dr. Richards does not find someone in Kraft's residence and becomes irritated and sabotaged, let Phil Coulson come forward to stop it. If you leave quietly, just ignore it. Don't you need to remind them to go to Kraft's laboratory? Definitely not needed. Kraft's laboratory is no secret, Dr. Richard will find it himself. Nick Fury sighed a little boredly. It's been a long time since he had dealt with such stupid subordinates. It seemed that he was looking for time to strengthen the professional skills of the novice agents of SHIELD. As for why it is necessary to add a contact person instead of directly contacting Phil Coulson, this is because Nick Fury has noticed Kraft's ability on the internet. Tony Stark also accidentally mentioned a human named Angela, intelligent. Therefore, when implementing this plan, all participants are working in a network-free environment, and even when contacting, they use a specific password. And Nick Fury's approach also successfully avoided Angela's surveillance, so Kraft has never known SHIELD's actions until now. Time passed quickly while Nick Fury waited silently. Soon, the agent in Chinatown sent an instant report. Sir, they are fighting. The expression on the face of the agent who came to report was slightly strange. What's wrong? Nick Fury couldn't hide the strangeness of his subordinates, he frowned and asked. Although according to SHIELD's plan, the two sides should fight, but the kid Kraft has too many things hidden. The only uncertainty in Nick Fury's plan is exactly what Kraft can achieve. So when it was discovered that the agent's expression was wrong, Nick Fury's heart was raised. Dr. Richard and the others are fighting with two small animals, one cat and one dog. Oh. That's okay. Nick Fury breathed a sigh of relief. After the dogman appeared, he guessed that Kraft's black cat would certainly not be easy, so after learning about Reed Richards, they were stopped by two pets. And will not be surprised. Notify Phil Coulson that they will continue to monitor, and he will decide when to intervene based on the situation at the scene. Even if Kraft equipped his two little pets with battle armor, Reed Richards and the others are three well-known superheroes. There is no reason why they can't beat two little animals, and not all cats are cooing. Nick Fury thinks so. However, Reed and others did not agree very much. Because he and his two companions are being crushed and beaten by a cat and a dog. Actually equip your pet with a battle armor comparable to Iron Man. Is this guy Kraft so headstrong? Reed Richards is simply miserable. A few minutes ago, Dr. Richards brought his fiancée Susan and friend Ben to Kraft's residence and rang the doorbell. As the door opened, two pets wearing red scarves came out from inside, a black cat and a yellow dog. Just when Dr. Richards thought it was Kraft deliberately humiliating himself so much, he saw the black cat speak. Yes, meow. Their uniform is the same as that of the fireman who ran into the trouble last time. Then the Shiba Inu also said, "What are you waiting for? Beat them. Rua." As Quinn's voice fell, two sets of armor, one black and one white, covered the bodies of the two small animals. Without a word, they attacked Reed Richards and others. The dexterous black cat armor is responsible for melee entanglement, and the rugged white canine armor is responsible for long-range support. The cooperation between the two small animals complements each other. In addition, Reed Richards didn't expect Kraft's pets to have this kind of combat power, and directly caught them by surprise, which led to Quinn and Beja taking the initiative from the beginning of the battle. Goo. Sky, who was watching from a distance, swallowed, and said to Phil Coulson, who was on the side, "Sir, I suddenly discovered that my ability might not even be able to beat a kitten." Ha ha. Phil Coulson also laughed silently twice. Because of the existence of the Dogman, he was somewhat psychologically prepared, but he was still taken aback by the fighting power displayed by Quinn and Beja. Don't say it's you. At least half of the members of the Avengers are not necessarily their opponents. Phil Coulson thought for a while, and said this paragraph that he didn't know if it was comforting or discouraging. Stare. After staring at Phil Coulson's bald forehead full of resentment for a long time, and staring him a little uncomfortably, Sky snorted and looked back in the direction of Kraft's house. I thought I could take this opportunity to talk to Kraft. The Fantastic Four is really unbelievable. Sky whispered to Roar in a low voice, except for Phil Coulson and Melinda. Everyone else didn't actually know Nick Fury's specific plan, thinking it was just to prevent the situation from getting worse. So Sky also thought that if Kraft couldn't beat the Fantastic Four, he could stand on his side to help, and then take the opportunity to say a few words to his idol. Who would have thought that Kraft sent two pets to deflate the three of Reed Richards? But Sky thought about it again. Even pets are so powerful, worthy of being my idol. The turmoil in this battle is still very big. The most important thing is that Quinn's fighting methods are mostly fire support, and the crackling is the same as during the New Year on the other side of the ocean. Fortunately, the people of S.H.I.E.L.D. were prepared long ago. Before the two sides went to war, they tried to move all the surrounding residents away and pulled a blockade in the distance, so it didn't affect other people. However, this kind of huge amounts of movement also attracted a large number of reporters. Ordinary reporters can only return without success in the face of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s blockade. However, as there are more and more strangers on the Earth, the reporter group, there are also many supernaturalists in it. Among these supernatural people who became journalists, except for a few who were originally journalists, many of the newcomers were freedom fighters, who didn't believe in the government and wanted to use their own capabilities to expose the truth that was covered by the government. Wherever there is an official blockade, they will go wherever they go. So when they heard that a blockade of S.H.I.E.L.D. had appeared in Chinatown, they all rushed over. Of course, Eddie Bullock, the host of Symbiont Venom, was indispensable. "Hey, Eddie, you are here too." A power reporter called Roar to Eddie Bullock, who had just arrived. "Hello, Auguste." The members of the Supernatural Reporter said more and less, and naturally they have had some dealings with each other. Although sometimes they have different opinions, they often cooperate with each other when inquiring about the truth. So Eddie asked unceremoniously, "What's the situation now?" This time it is not the police or the army that is responsible for the blockade, but the famous S.H.I.E.L.D., so we haven't taken any action yet, for fear of violent attacks. Auguste explained in a low voice. This is a bit troublesome. So is it still the old rules? Eddie frowned. As a supernatural person, their information had long been mastered by S.H.I.E.L.D. They didn't know it earlier, and they all felt that they would not be caught. As a result, in a S.H.I.E.L.D. operation, their group of abilities reporters who had joined rashly were handed over by S.H.I.E.L.D. Only then did they realize that they had not been arrested, it was just that S.H.I.E.L.D. did not care about them. But if they were so easy to admit counsel, they wouldn't come to be reporters, so they fought secretly with S.H.I.E.L.D. several times later, but unfortunately, they lost more and won less. Then they learned to unite, walk one or two people in, then share information, and even jokingly formed a loose Inquirer League. Otherwise, what can I do? These guys have been infiltrated by Hydra, and they are still so domineering now, which is really uncomfortable. The reason why many abilities reporters did not choose to join the official organization is because the previous Hydra incident caused them to have a very serious sense of distrust of the official power, and the same was true for Eddie Brock, who wanted to join Avengers before. I just hope I won't let me run into Vibe again this time. Her ability has restrained me too. Eddie shrugged helplessly. Although they and these super reporters were united, they still lost more than the more professional S.H.I.E.L.D. But there is no other way. Their ability has been touched by S.H.I.E.L.D. It is too simple for S.H.I.E.L.D. to target them. When the reporters were discussing how to break through the S.H.I.E.L.D. blockade, the fighting on Reed finally changed a little. After all, Reed Richards is also a genius scientist with the same name as Tony Stark, after gradually adapting to the fighting style of Quinn and Beja. Reed quickly communicated with Susan and Ben in a low voice, and then he sold a flaw in front of Beja. Even though technology has acquired a human way of thinking, Beja is only a small black cat, and it is still too simple compared with treacherous humans, so she slammed into Reed's trap. Reed suddenly took out a small silver-white metal ball and threw it at her when Beja rushed over. A large amount of air conditioning was expelled from it, and Beja instantly froze. However, freezing does not have any effect on the battlesuit made by Kraft. The surface temperature of the T-Mall armor rises rapidly, and the ice on the outer layer quickly melts and evaporates. But at the moment, the Stone Man had already carried a boulder and replaced Susan's energy field in front of Quinn, while the invisible woman who was vacant created a spherical energy field, enveloping Beja. Stand up. And after Beja melted the ice, he quickly compressed the force ball and reduced it to only the file size of the ball, so that Beja completely lost the space for movement, and there was no way to arbitrarily launch the light blade to destroy the trap. Her force field ball. Shameless meow. You guys do like me as a little cat. Despicable two-legged beast. Beja, who was forced to form a ball, can now only swear in Susan's energy field. Susan took control of the force field ball and lifted Beja to the front, and explained softly, "We just want to talk to Kraft. As long as you promise me not to continue attacking us, I will release you, okay?" If she has a choice, Susan doesn't want to bully a kitten. Although she is a superhero, she essentially likes fluffy kittens, just like most women. If it weren't for her bad brother, she would have liked to hold the little black cat in front of her and suck it up. Not good at all. That fireman actually dared to bully Alice. I want to beat him to death. Beja's favorite poop shoveling officer is Alice, who always takes care of her. Her favorite poop shoveling officer has been bullied, and she is definitely going to help Alice. On the other side, without Beja's restraint, Quinn gradually fell into a disadvantage when facing the combination of the Stone Man and Mr. Fantastic. After all, Quinn's flexibility is still too much worse than that of Beja. In addition, after Reed figured out his attack methods, he also began to use some targeted props, which made Quinn lose many of his weapons. Effect. Sir, shall we not go up and help? Seeing Kraft's pet falling into the wind, Skye looked anxiously at Phil Coulson. Apart from being Kraft's little fan, there is another reason that she has always liked cats, dogs and cats. Bullying Beja and Quinn. It's fine for that bastard in Fire Thunder to make trouble unreasonably. Even the other three of the Fantastic Four love to bully small animals, and the reputation of superhero has been ruined by them. Skye stared at Reed Richards and the others in the distance. The habit he had cultivated during the high tide was just about to change. When will he find a chance to expose the good things done by the Fantastic Four? Phil Coulson didn't know that his men were planning to make trouble. He shook his head and replied, "Kraft hasn't appeared yet, and Dr. Richards and the others are well measured. We don't need to come forward for the time being." If according to Nick Fury's plan, they really shouldn't intervene now. Instead, they have to sit and watch the relationship between the two parties deteriorate further, but they can't endure endlessly, so Phil Coulson saw that both sides were still in control and did not kill. After that, I didn't even think about intervening. In addition, you now have other tasks. Phil Coulson clicked on the headphones, received the news from the blockade, and said to Skye. The troublesome group of reporters appeared again, among them Eddie B.U. Locke. Skye, he will leave it to you. Skye, who originally wanted to argue with Phil Coulson for reasons, blinked his eyes, then nodded and agreed. Leave it to me with confidence, he is my defeated man. In Kraft's laboratory, Johnny Stone, who had fallen into a coma, was stuffed into a machine similar to an Emery machine by Kraft. After some scanning, the computer screen showed detailed data about Johnny's body. The young man's body is a bit weak. Watching Johnny Stone's body report, Kraft found that the mutation of the Fantastic Four did not seem to enhance his physical fitness. Most of the data were average, and some aspects were even weaker than the average. No, the combat effectiveness of the Stone Man is not worse than the normal Hulk, So it is just that the mutation of this guy does not enhance his physique. Or is this guy too useless to make up for the mutation? Kraft scratched his head and continued to look down. Johnny Stone's body is essentially the same as ordinary humans, except that there is a kind of energy hidden in the body, which is basically the data about the energy of the cosmic storm, which Kraft found from the database of the Life Foundation. Same. There is one thing to say: 4 people have been infused with cosmic storm energy, but they are all mutating in a good direction. It's not scientific at all. The energy of the cosmic storm is not something that is green, safe, and pollution-free. Under normal circumstances, it is normal to be infected by this energy, not to mention that the body is deformed, but the immune system is reduced and the hormone balance in the body is broken. In a situation like the Fantastic Four that all become superheroes, the chances of winning the jackpot in a lottery ticket are even lower. Having said that, who is Shenjing Chase Demon? This name is quite Dio. Patting his head to ignore this sudden knowledge, Kraft continued to analyze the cosmic storm energy in Johnny Stone's body with the instrument. Kraft controlled the instrument and started to stimulate the energy in Johnny's body. The disturbed energy quickly integrated with the cells in his body and directly transformed into a special elemental energy. Its external manifestation was flame. When Kraft stopped stimulating the cosmic storm energy, it quickly separated from Johnny's cells and slowly flowed through his body. How should I put it? Kraft scratched his head. Ben Grimm is a bit miserable. The 4 people have undergone mutations, and only his cells are permanently combined with the energy of the cosmic storm. It is really a bit unfortunate, but it is much better than the distortion. However, because the cosmic storm energy in Johnny Stone is in a free state, it is not difficult to extract them. There are several devices in Kraft's existing inventory that can do it. So Kraft picked out an energy extraction device randomly, extracted a little cosmic storm energy from Johnny's body, and injected it into the body of a white mouse. As the energy of the cosmic storm was injected, the mouse in the glass box screamed sharply, and then the muscles in its body quickly expanded and enlarged until it broke its own fur, and the exploded flesh and blood splashed all over the glass box. The death was extremely tragic. Kraft tugged at the corner of his mouth and quickly cleared the bloody glass box, and the cosmic storm energy injected into the mouse was also dissipated with the death of the mouse. This is the normal situation. Although the results of the test are not very satisfactory, such a development is in line with common sense. The Fantastic Four and the 4 of them are all positive mutations, which is really outrageous. If Bruce Banner, Norman Osborn, Kurt Connors, and the guys who have spent a lot of money to do human experiments, if they know it, they won't have to cry with envy. Kraft doesn't have a hobby to gamble with his body. Anyway, things like supernatural powers are not a big deal to him, so he is extracting all the cosmic storm energy in Johnny Stone's body. I didn't use it to myself in the future. But Kraft didn't throw these energies aside, but continued to study how this thing integrates with Johnny's cells. After all, Johnny Stone's abilities are simply the combination of his own cells and the cosmic storm energy. Although Kraft has extracted the cosmic storm energy from his body, as long as he wants to restore the abilities, he just needs to fill the body with new energy. Wouldn't Kraft be a waste of work? Therefore, Kraft also made Johnny Stone's body unable to receive the energy of the cosmic storm, so as to complete his promise to deprive the Thunderbolt of the fire ability. After drawing several cans of Johnny Stone's blood and cutting a lot of his flesh and doing several experiments, Kraft finally found a way to stop the energy of the cosmic storm and its integration. Thanks to Kraft's Dream Repair Liquid 7, it's powerful enough to toss Johnny Stone and he won't let him belch. Kraft injected a batch of nanomachines into Johnny's body specifically to dissipate cosmic storm energy, so that even if cosmic storm energy enters his body, it will be dissipated by these nanomachines. Definitely if Johnny Stone has another adventure in the future and gets the ability again, then Kraft doesn't matter. He doesn't believe that Johnny Stone will dare to trouble himself after this time. Or does Reed Richards have the ability to find and take out these nanomachines one by one? Kraft said if he was patient, what if Johnny Stone regained his abilities? It's a big deal to prepare some bullets loaded with dispersive nanomachines, and then conflict with the Fantastic Four, and directly hit them with a nanomachine bullet, making them all return to ordinary people. Oh. I accidentally smashed up a special weapon for the Magic 3 missing one. At this time, Kraft reacted with hindsight. He stretched out his hand and grabbed his hair. He didn't think it was a big deal. There were so many people without abilities, wouldn't all of them still be alive? Well, I can return this pesky guy back next. How about Quinn and Beja? Bee was caught by the invisible woman's force field. Quinn was unable to support her alone, but none of the other 3 could fly. Quinn was flying in the sky and cursing the streets, and Bee was also cursing along. Angela said to Kraft cheerfully, "Didn't I say that, if you can't support it, you just jump into the laboratory?" Kraft's face was full of black lines. Quinn's stupid dog was nothing more than that, and Beja, the cold little cat, was also taken away. Notify them to bring the Fantastic Three, Mrs. Just let them take this stuff away. No, I'll just go over. Kraft thought for a while, grabbed Johnny Stone, who was in a coma, positioned it near the house, and started the leap. Reed Richards was helpless. When the dog in the armor stopped fighting with them, but flew in the sky and yelled at him, Reed had no choice but to take him. Because apart from Thunderbolt, the other three Fantastic Four can't fly, and the Invisible Woman, who is good at long-range attacks at the moment, needs to concentrate on maintaining the force field that traps the little black cat. Although Mr. Fantastic's ability can stretch any part of itself indefinitely, it can theoretically reach Quinn in the sky, but his flexibility and speed are incomparable with Quinn's screaming armor. Not to mention Ben Grimm, the Stone Man. He is cumbersome and basically useless except as a meat shield. So the three of them, to be precise, the two chasing Quinn, could only resist the foul language of a dog and tried every means to catch him from the sky. In fact, the two tried to ignore Quinn and rush directly to Kraft's residence, but in that case Quinn would run to attack the invisible female Susan, who restrained B and prevented him from moving. The scene suddenly reached a deadlock. But this is only for the Magic Three missing one. For Quinn, he can't be happier now. The stupid cat is caught, and he can scold the street unscrupulously. It would be perfect if he had another piece of Shang-Chi. Phil Coulson was also helpless. The development of things seems to be different from what they planned by S.H.I.E.L.D. Originally, according to his and Nick Fury's ideas, the next development should be a cat and a dog, a magical three missing a man, and then Kraft, who hid behind, made a personal appearance with them. When the two sides fought hard, S.H.I.E.L.D. suddenly intervened, and then gave a plan that both sides could barely accept, but after accepting it, it was not so cool. After the matter was over, both sides became more and more angry, continue to target each other. This is definitely the ideal state of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the simulation plan. In actual operation, S.H.I.E.L.D. will be biased towards Kraft. If you can't make both sides reluctantly accept it, then you will first wrong the Fantastic Four. Because Nick Fury's main purpose is to make an enemy for Kraft to contain him and prevent him from fighting against S.H.I.E.L.D. in the future, and there is no superhero willing to contribute. In addition, compared with Kraft, who is backed by the Spear Bureau, the Fantastic Four are obviously more bullying. In addition, this matter was originally because they were wrong, so who did not wrong them? However, things have just started crazily in a direction that S.H.I.E.L.D. had never imagined. What's the matter of cursing the street if you can't beat it? Are you not the famous Dogman? Phil Coulson felt that the few hairs on his head would definitely sacrifice a lot because of this. People used to say that in filming, children and animal actors are the most difficult to deal with. Sure enough. Normally, a person with this ability, regardless of whether it is a superhero or a super criminal, who would fight and not fight, concede defeat without admitting defeat, just hang on the sidelines and let go. If I knew it, I went to find an animal expert first. Phil Coulson sighed. Quinn scolded and cursed. The key is that he is still driving the loudspeaker. You must know that there are still a group of reporters outside who are not too busy watching it. If this mess of the Fantastic Four is exposed by the media, then the next situation will not be easy to control. In fact, S.H.I.E.L.D. has not thought of directly exposing Thunderbolt, using this simpler method to push the Fantastic Four to the opposite of Kraft. If it was before Hydra was cleaned up, it would be nothing, because S.H.I.E.L.D. at that time had enough power to control public opinion, but now it doesn't work, whether it is from the aspect of manpower, or the trust of the government in the public. The current S.H.I.E.L.D. does not have the ability to guarantee that it will not lose control. Compared to the helpless Phil Coulson and Reed, Skye, who was in charge of stopping the reporter with the Venom ability, was a lot easier. Originally, she was still entangled whether or not to release water to allow these reporters to break through her blockade and expose the truth of the incident. Skye wanted to expose the Fantastic Four. In addition to being a loyal fan of Kraft herself, she also had the professional habits that she had cultivated in the Rising Tide organization that year. But with the agent work at S.H.I.E.L.D. again and again, Skye also realized that some news is indeed better to be concealed, and she also felt that the relationship between Fantastic Four and Kraft would be difficult to repair after exposure. So after stopping Venom and others, she hasn't made up her mind whether to release the water. In the end, before she could think of a reason, Quinn had already snorted with a loudspeaker. Basically, the causes and consequences of this incident were already known by these reporters, so she didn't have to continue to struggle. Sir, shall we continue to block these reporters? Skye confirmed to Phil Coulson through his headset. Definitely. Empty mouth and video material are two concepts. Skye curled his lips, thinking that Phil Coulson was deceiving himself by doing this, but he still obeyed the order and continued to stop the ability reporters. After knowing the general situation of the matter, most people such as Venom did not continue to rush in, but turned around and left sensibly. It was a big deal to wait for 2 days before interviewing Kraft and the Fantastic Four, who were the parties. Man. In fact, Phil Coulson also knows that continuing to stop those reporters is basically in vain, but if there is no evidence, it will be easier for them to fish in troubled waters in public opinion. So the corresponding work is still to be done, even if S.H.I.E.L.D. knows that Kraft is unlikely to cooperate with them to hide the whole story from the media. Sir, most of the reporters have retreated, and a few diehard elements have also been temporarily detained by us for obstructing official duties. After driving away the troubled reporters, Sky returned to Phil Coulson and looked at Quinn, who had scolded the three of Reed as one Buddha and two Buddhas in the distance, and couldn't help but laugh. That dog is so powerful that he can scold for so long. And his cursing ability will not lose to those street gangsters in Hell's Kitchen. Phil Coulson also smiled helplessly, feeling that after Quinn began to scold the street, the three of Reed Richards were more irritated than when they were crushed and beaten by two small animals. Phil Coulson's feeling is not wrong. You must know that Quinn's street curse skills were learned from the stinky raccoon, the Rockets. As a modified beast that is rarely seen in the universe, the relationship between Rocket Raccoon and Quinn is pretty good. Dogs will occasionally go to the universe to find rockets to gather together. After coming and going, they will put Rocket Raccoon's mouth. Smelly Kung Fu learned 30 to 40% back. Although they are only 3 or 4 successful husbands of the Rocket Raccoon, they are used to deal with cultural people who have been educated since childhood, such as Reed Richards, and it is simply a dimensionality reduction blow. So now the anger value of the magic 3 missing one man is rising, which also makes Phil Coulson extremely distressed now. Don't intervene. I feel like Quinn continues to scold me. The immortality between Fantastic Four and Kraft is not far away, and some bystanders like Phil Coulson feel that it is too much. But let's intervene now. The other party hasn't shown up yet, and S.H.I.E.L.D.'s intervention at this time is not in their interest. Fortunately, Kraft didn't worry Phil Coulson for long. With the blue light flickering, Kraft brought Johnny's figure from virtual to real, and appeared in front of everyone.